It's 7 p.m. and we'll call the April 5th, 2021 edition of the Westfield, Washington Township Advisory Plan Commission to order. Sounds like whoever was making the noise has stopped, which is helpful. So if staff will please confirm the presence of a quorum.
Ms. Berkman?
Here.
Mr. Graham?
Present.
Mr. Horkay?
Here.
Mr. Johns?
Here.
Dr. Kelleher?
Here.
Mr. Maui?
Here.
Mr. McCarty?
Here.
Mr. Schmitz? Ms. Spoljaric?
Here.
Mr. Schmitz? Okay, we have a quorum.
Thank you. First item is business, as always, is approval of minutes. There are two of them for approval this evening. Minutes of March 1 and March 15. If there are any questions, comments, or clarifications, please bring them up. If not, otherwise, could somebody offer a motion to approve both sets of minutes?
Randall Graham makes a motion to approve the March 1st, 2021 and March 15th, 2021 minutes as written.
Kelleher will second.
Thank you. Been motioned and seconded. Will staff please call the roll for approval of the minutes?
Ms. Berkman?
Yes.
Mr. Graham?
Yes.
Mr. Horkay?
Yes.
Mr. Johns?
Yes.
Dr. Kelleher?
Yes.
Mr. Maui?
Yes.
Mr. McCarty?
Yes.
Ms. Spoljaric?
yes,
Motion carries.
Thank you. Will staff please review the rules of procedure for tonight? We have multiple types of agenda items to review this evening.
Yes. Due to the COVID-19 emergency, as declared by the Governor of Indiana, the format and conduct of the meeting has been modified to comply with executive orders regarding the conduct of public meetings, public hearings, and public gatherings. Relevant portions of the Indiana Open Door Law have been amended or suspended during the pendency of this emergency. For tonight's items that do require a public hearing, the meeting will have the following structure. The department will summarize the petition. Then the petitioner will be given up to 15 minutes to present to the Plan Commission. The president will open a public hearing, and individuals will be given 3 minutes to speak. The public hearing will be closed when all interested members of the audience have had a chance to be heard, and all emails received during the meeting have been provided to the Plan Commission members. The petitioner will then have a chance to respond to comments, and the Plan Commission will follow with any comments, questions, or concerns regarding the petition. For items that do not require a public hearing, the department will summarize the petition and highlight any modifications to the item since the item was last before the Plan Commission. The department will also describe what action, if any, is necessary to be taken. The petitioner will be given up to 15 minutes to present any changes, and the Plan Commission will then act upon the petition. For our rules of conduct this evening, we ask that you please not disrupt the proceedings in any way. If you need to have a private discussion, we ask that you please quietly exit the room. Please silence your devices at this time, and again, if you must answer them, please quietly exit the room. If you are attending in person and wish to speak in regard to a petition scheduled for a public hearing, please fill out a yellow card, which are available in the back of the room and up by me, and then bring them to us prior to the presentation of that petition. During your comments, please state your name and address into the microphone for the record, and we ask that you not repeat previously stated comments. Your presentation will be timed, and you will be advised when there is approximately 30 seconds remaining. If you are not attending in person and you would like to submit comments, please email them to planners@westfield.in.gov with the petition name or number included in the subject line. Those comments will be forwarded to Plan Commission members and the petitioner. We would also like to remind everyone to please speak directly into the microphone so your comments can be put onto the record. Also, please mute your microphone when you're not speaking. And for people in the audience, if you do approach the podium to speak, please turn on the microphone when you begin and turn off the microphone when you are finished. Thank you.
Thank you. We have one item of miscellaneous business to begin with tonight, a request to suspend APC rule of procedure.
This is a request from the petitioners of the Harmony PUD Amendment petition to suspend the Plan Commission rules of procedure for public noticing of the yard sign requirements. The petitioners placed the public notice yard signs 7 days instead of the required 10 days. All other public noticing was met in accordance to the noticing rules and procedures. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions regarding the reason for this request to suspend? If not, I think it's a reasonable request. It's not that they didn't post yard signs. It was for 7 days instead of 10. We had received comments prior to that, so it appears that anybody in that area that cared to comment, knew to comment, and have done so. So without questions, can we have a motion regarding the request to suspend Article 8.1B?
This is Kelleher. I will make a motion to suspend the rules for whatever this is. There's not a number on it. Whatever.
We're suspending Article 8.1B of our rules of procedure that stipulate the time frame for posting of a sign.
Okay, so moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, motion by Dr. Kelleher, second by Andre Maui. Will staff please call the roll?
Ms. Berkman?
Yes.
Mr. Graham?
Yes.
Mr. Horkay?
Yes.
Mr. Johns?
Yes.
Dr. Kelleher?
Yes.
Mr. Maui?
Yes.
Mr. McCarty?
Yes.
Ms. Boljaric?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, that rule is suspended.
Just to clarify, this is for the second item on your public hearing agenda, the Harmony PUD amendment for signage.
Correct.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Moving on, there are 2 items to approve as part of our consent agenda. Will somebody care to make a motion for approval of these items?
I'll make a motion for approval of the consent agenda and just want to say the Panda Express looks like a fantastic building.
Thank you, Victor. Is there a second?
Randall Graham, second.
Thank you. Will staff please call the roll?
Mr. Graham?
Yes.
Mr. Horkay?
Yes.
Mr. Johns?
Yes.
Dr. Kelleher?
Yes.
Mr. Maui?
Yes.
Mr. McCarty?
Yes.
Ms. Boljaric?
Yes.
Ms. Berkman?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Moving on to items of business. Top of page 2 is Lantern Commons PUD, petition 2102-PUD-04.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President, members of the commission. Pam Howard with the Community Development Department. Before you this evening, we have a proposed new PUD district to be known as Lantern Commons. The 61-acre site is located at the northeast corner of US 31 and 161st Street and is currently zoned the GBPD district with commitments that were approved in 2007. The ordinance proposes a mixed-use development, which would include multifamily residential and business uses, and also includes standards to guide the development of the real estate. This item received a public hearing at your February 1st meeting. Since that time, several changes have been made to the proposed ordinance and exhibits, which are outlined in the staff report, as well as the new exhibits, including a redlined ordinance. This item is eligible for your recommendation this evening. I do have the petitioner's representative, Matt Skelton, here to present, after which both he and I are available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Matt, the floor is yours.
Good evening, members of the commission. For your record, Matt Skelton with Church Hill and Antrim with offices at 116 North Union Street here in Westfield. With me this evening with Front Street Partners is Martin Ing here, John Elliott, and also Scott Morton, our architect, is on the team's line. I won't recap unless anybody has questions what we covered when we were here last. I'd just like to go over some of the changes that were made. There's been many enhancements and additional materials included in the PUD ordinance, and there's been modifications made in response to the great input that we received from members of the public, neighbors, team members with the staff, Plan Commission, and of course the council. And so what we've done is we have instituted a limitation, taken out some of the fuzziness and where the lines within the PUD areas can fluctuate. It helps as a developer to be able to have that flexibility, but we of course understand you want some measure of predictability, and so we've basically agreed to build in substantial compliance with the concept plan if Pam or Kevin would like to put it up. Thank you. We also substantially pared down the permitted use list. We reorganized that section of the PUD ordinance to make it a little bit more readable for folks. I think there were some struggles with the previous version. So there's a simple grid permitted use exhibit that is included in the PUD today. And then we have instituted some additional setbacks, area by area, specific setbacks based on anticipated use. Building heights have been carefully restricted to ensure the transition that we have discussed with neighbors and with others. As a result of our additional due diligence work, we've looked at this through a finer lens and have been able to reduce our number of apartments that we were proposing to what you see here. The apartment transition area, if you'll look at Exhibit 8 of your materials, there's a transition cross-section shown on that exhibit that shows, if you'll, pan down. This is the area between west, and then it shows a cross-section of what will happen between their property line and the nearest multifamily building. What we talked about with the neighbors, we met with the neighbors that abut the site, stood on Woodside Drive on a nice winter day. It wasn't too cold, but it was a clear consensus of the group that they preferred to actually have a mound installed with evergreen trees instead of leaving what is there. And I think there may be some exceptions, but by and large, a lot of the trees in that area were not in especially good shape, and seasonally they didn't provide much buffering or visual obstruction at all. And so what we anticipate with the site work that will happen, there would be a 5-foot mound, as you can see, towards the western edge of the property. On the other side of that mound, we expect there to be some cutting required. It won't be uniform across the whole property line, but basically the road would lie at a place a little lower than where the property is to the west, to the left of the mound. Then you'd have the street cross section, which we'll be working through that item with the Department of Works Public Works as we would move through the approval process. And then the site is actually kind of tiered. That's one of the benefit of being able to do multifamily transitional use along that northern border, is that you end up with this really nice terraced effect, and in many places we expect that the lower floor of the apartments would not even be visible. So it would essentially look like a 2-story structure, even though it's a 3-story. We've also incorporated several architectural exhibits into the PUD. These are on your links. They're exhibits 5, 6, and 7. We have agreed to build in substantial compliance with these architectural exhibits. There are elevations which we are agreeing to build in substantial compliance with in Exhibit 5, 6, and 7, and then there are also some illustrative pictures that I think help convey in 3D a little bit better the character and quality of those things that are being proposed. And all of those have been incorporated into the PUD ordinance to give definition. We've eliminated all references to multi-story parking garage facility. We had included standards for that. I know there was some positive feedback we received on that, but realistically, that's probably not going to happen on this site. And if it were to happen, it would probably be part of a city-initiated project, I'm guessing. We have incorporated an open space exhibit at your Exhibit 9, the link on your agenda. This shows how the open space within the overall PUD will be programmed and utilized, and how it all ties together. And so there's a lot of thought that went into this, and that's been incorporated into the PUD as well. And then there are some other site elements that are shown in your Exhibit 10. These are items that we expect to be installed throughout the site for thematic purposes. This is a bit of a fuzzy commitment in that we've spoken with the city, and there's many of these elements that would be located in or near the right-of-way, so there's things to be worked out, but this is to show you where we're heading and what we'd like to do. And then there are also some gateway options that we have incorporated exhibits at your link number 11, Exhibit 11. And again, we've spoken with the city about these concepts, and I just want to make it clear so there's no misunderstanding. These are informed exhibits. These are prepared by somebody that knows what they're doing, but they have not, I mean, there's a lot of review and approval that would have to be done for these bridges to actually be constructed. This is not intended to be eye candy. It's really what we're trying to accomplish on the site, and you have to start planning somewhere. So this first exhibit shows a bridge crossing over what would be Westfield Boulevard, the connector. And this is the new roundabout on the right. That's the new roundabout that is currently getting ready for construction. And so this shows a ramping up of a ramp to this bridge, and then a spiral descension. So you would come down to grade down this spiral pedestrian way, and then you can continue on either along Westfield Boulevard or the Natalie Wheeler Trail. This does tentatively show, the last exhibit showed a possible underground tunnel underneath 161st Street on the right. That's not likely, and talking with the city, that would require a closure that I don't think the city is interested in doing, and it would also, there's some water table issues there that may make that challenging, but that's conceptually an option. And this shows what it would look like down here at the bottom. And then on option B is the same thing, except it shows what another bridge structure would look like there on the roundabout. And it shows kind of like what that gateway look would look like at the bottom. And again, these are conversations that have only just begun with the city, so they're very preliminary. And we also included with an exhibit on the last page that this should be familiar to you. This is basically that same intersection that without any bridges. It just shows the normal crosswalk. And then it shows our proposed arch entry feature as well. So those are the things that this is where we're headed with this. And so one of those options is where we will land, and we hope that it'll be one of the more creative ones, but that's a conversation that still has to be had. So with that, I'll just highlight a couple of things. There were a few comments received as recently as this morning, I believe, regarding some of the uses that are permitted within the PUD, and we've reviewed those requests for restrictions on uses, and we're fine with it. There's in Area D, there's an accommodation or a permitted use of hospital and heliport. We don't really intend to have a hospital or heliport, and if there were to be a hospital that wanted to go there, I'm sure that's, might be a good reason to come back and ask for approval for that. But that's not our plan right now. And the And so we're fine eliminating that. A hospital is permitted by right in the GB district today, so we didn't add that. That was already in there, it just wasn't, it was there by default. And then someone asked if we could eliminate tavern and nightclub from Area C, the commercial area, and we're fine to eliminate it. We expect that what would happen in Area C, if there were to be any adult beverage serving area in there, it would be part of a restaurant use. There was a question about why we are reducing or suggesting to reduce an open space reduction from the normally required 20% to 10%, and we will comfortably exceed 20%. So we're fine committing to the 20%. That reduction was requested early on in the process before we had spent as much time with our engineering folks. So when I say we'll comfortably exceed 20, we'll probably be over 30. So that's just as a note. And then lastly, I think there was a request that we agree to some building height, that the city has typically and traditionally encouraged as much massing and height along 31 as it can get. And so that's why, as proposed, there was no maximum building height proposed in Area D, which is on the hard corner of 161st and 31. But a 60-foot limitation we can live with. We'd prefer to have no max, but if it gets us over the hump, we're happy to commit to 60 feet. And with that, I think I'm done with my updates. And if you have any questions, we're happy to respond to them. And again, we have our architect on the line if there's any questions. Oh, I did want to make one clarification as well on the exhibits that show the multifamily elevations. It only shows one side of those buildings, but both the sides look the same. I mean, if you see one side, it's the same as the other side. So that's 360 degree. And if we need to insert text stating that, we're happy to do that. Happy to respond to any questions.
Okay, thank you. We will go around the commission tonight. We will start with our virtual attendee, Dr. Kelleher.
Let me unmute here.
Thank you.
I appreciate all of the changes you've made. We're now into a lot more detail, which I think is important. I have a question on, you have these water features and then there's like this sausage thing next to them. Is that also water along either side of the boulevard?
It is.
Okay, so there is a nice long water feature then. I think I am good. I would support the changes that you are willing to make. The 20% open space, removing the hospital and heliport, tavern, nightclub, and the building height brought down to 60 feet. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Andre Maui?
So I like the updates and the changes. It's all taking us in a positive direction. I also really appreciate, by the way, the chart or the matrix, as you called it, for the land use. That was so much easier to process this time. I don't have any remaining questions about what you've proposed. I think it looks good.
That was quick, thank you. Victor McCartney.
I'll echo Mr. Maui's comments with all the positive changes and so forth. One thing that stuck out to me in difference from the initial concept we saw before was in Area B, where the business spaces were on opposite ends of the space, and now they're conjoined. I like that change. So, no, just I think overall a great project with walkability, and I think it'd be good for Westfield.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our other virtual attendee, Cindy Spoljarek.
Thank you, Bob. I do appreciate the changes that have been made to date. I do have a few issues still remaining. One of my concerns is that we have at least some character examples that are incorporated into the ordinance for B, C, and E, and we don't have those for A and D. So for anyone following along, we're more the assisted living area and then the hotel area. We don't have anything other than the State Road 32 overlay standards tied to those. I'm concerned the initial images I saw that were a potential for at least the assisted living use was not something that I would consider fitting for this project. And I'm concerned that the other parts of the project have these incorporated images and we don't have anything for these. So my concern is that we're going to get something there that maybe fits the 32 overlay standards, but doesn't necessarily fit the character of the project, and it would still be compliant. So I was really hoping that we actually had examples there to see. It's critical area. It's right up on Union Street. It's right up on the Natalie Trail. So, I mean, very visible part of this project and a very sizable part of the project, and probably one of the first to get built if I have any clue about that kind of thing. So I really would like to see something incorporated into the PUD before we move forward. Also with apartments, with the section E, we don't have any elevations or specifics for the parking structures. So that's a concern to me. They can be quite unsightly, and I'm not seeing any detail on those. So I'd really want to see that before moving any further as well. So there also wasn't any details specified for a fence. Maybe I missed something there, but it just said a fence, and it didn't have much more to say. So maybe something's changed there. And also, we discuss in a broader sense that Westfield Boulevard getting expanded and how that fits into this project, obviously, big component. So thank you.
Are you through, Cindy, or are you still talking? They were kind of.
I'm sorry, Bob.
You were breaking up just a little bit.
I was actually hoping we could wait on a vote on this until we had more clarification on A and D and actual character examples to know what we're actually going to get there, have a better idea. That would be my hope anyway. So thank you. That's it.
All right. Do you have any other comments for right now?
No.
No. All right. We'll circle back to that and continue going through commission comments and then let Matt respond. Kristen Berkman would be next.
Thank you, Bob. I think this is an exciting project for this corner. It's a really nice anchor. Is that me? No.
Is it me?
Okay, that's better, isn't it? Or is it still echoing?
Cindy's Bulgaric, are you muted again?
I am muted.
Not just that moment, she wasn't.
Okay, we'll try it again.
All right.
I think this is a really nice anchor to the downtown, the entire project. And I appreciate you saying that you'll remove the hospital and the heliport, because I felt like the heliport wasn't really appropriate with so much residential nearby and on this spot. The only question, although I would echo Cindy's thoughts on, we need to understand what the architecture is going to be here, because the architecture you're showing I really like and think it really gives a nice feel. I like all the trees, that you're preserving some of the trees around the outside edge, which was something that we talked about. And then the trees along these roadways, it's just really adding a lot of green, which I think is positive for that parcel. My only question at this point is that you have a religious institution as an improved use in A and B. And this particular spot, I think we've really got to get every tax benefit out of it that we can, as much as possible. And so if, for instance, a church were to go into those two spots, we would be giving up a lot of tax revenue on a premier parcel. So I guess I'd just like your thoughts. You don't, I mean, you can wait till the end, but your thoughts on that, on why you kept that use in. That's okay.
The religious institutions are permitted by right there, although I will tell you, there's an economic development overlay in Westfield in over all TIF districts. And so if it's not a tax-paying entity, it's not permitted there without a layer of council approval. And typically in those situations in the past, I don't know how they would deal with a religious institution, but at least with some of the other tax exempt uses that have located in these, they've negotiated payments in lieu of taxes, so it basically fulfills the same objective without, instead of taxes, they're making regular payments.
Think Riverview Hospital.
Yeah. And so there, I appreciate what you're saying, but I think the protections from a city perspective are already in place.
Okay, I didn't realize that there was the overlay with the TIF districts. So that would also cover schools, because I don't feel like there's an elementary going in on that, but if there were a college type online school that went in, that would fall in that same category, I assume.
Including senior care facilities. I mean, there's been instances where they have chosen a not-for-profit status, and if they're gonna do that, there's a process they have to go through now in order to be able to accomplish that.
Okay, great, thank you. That's all I have, thank you.
Thank you. Randy Graham.
Thank you, Mr. President. I like the changes that have been made. I think there's a lot of creativity that's gone into this. I think it's a good-looking project, it's had a lot of work put into it, and I think it's ready to move forward. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Mike Johns.
I agree with pretty much everything that's been said this evening. I think you've done a remarkable job with this project, incorporating the Westfield Boulevard connector in the way you have. I appreciate all the changes that you've made, the upgrades. And I also appreciate the fact that you're going to build in substantial compliance with the concept plan. I would, though, I guess I agree with Cindy, I would like to see possibly some better description as to what the surface parking is going to look like, what those structures are going to look like. And I know this isn't really your issue, but I'm a little concerned with the way that Union Street connects there with the Westfield connector. And I think the first time it was presented as a roundabout, and now it's kind of just a stoplight or stop sign, that, I think that issue, and it may be more of a city engineering issue, but I'd like to feel a little bit more comfortable about that.
Sure.
The project as a whole is pretty darn nice, I think.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. I'm very impressed with the changes. I think they're all genuinely good improvements. I'm curious about a couple of things. The possibility of increasing back the number of residential units, the apartments, should the additional land become available. Is that something that you're looking at as something that you believe could happen, and do you have an alternate site plan that would actually show how the residential area would be reconfigured to get the additional units if that property was added to this site? I also would support actually not having the 60-foot limit on the corner site by 31. I think whatever great architecture, and thinking about Cindy's comment and Mike weighing in on it as well, that we need to make certain that we're not getting something higher than what would otherwise be good looking. But if the standards are right and there's a user who wants to put up something that needs one more floor than what 60 feet will allow, I'd rather have the additional floor in a taller building as long as it's a great addition to the corner. Otherwise, I'm very pleased to see what you brought to us, and if you want to take a few minutes and respond, then we'll see if there's any further additional comments and see if there's an interest in going ahead and providing the recommendation that you're looking for tonight.
Well, I'll speak to the additional land briefly. So the city's zoning ordinance contemplates that when areas that are rights of way, when they become vacated, that they become incorporated into the land adjacent to that vacated area, and it assumes that same zoning treatment. And because I think there might have been, I mean, we've talked about this at some length, there might be a little bit of vagueness or ambiguity about how that might apply with a state right-of-way, because they don't really vacate, they transfer. I mean, it's a little different. And so it was just trying to set the groundwork so there's an acknowledgement of what process would follow. We don't have an alternative concept plan, and presumably if we propose something that was substantially different than what you're looking at, we'd have to, be back in front of you anyway. But that was to just lay the groundwork. I don't know that we have any expectation that that's actually going to happen, but if it did, we certainly would like to put it to use. And then I guess the only other, somebody mentioned something about a fence there. Yeah, that I should have covered that, but that was one of the essential items that our Woodside neighbors really wanted us to incorporate, a fence barrier to discourage folks who are maybe walking along the roadside path on the Westfield Boulevard extender from them being tempted to kind of walk the dog or meander off track to the north and maybe get close to people's backyard. So, and we're fine doing that. Architecturally, it looks really nice with the site, and we have plenty of examples throughout our materials of exactly where that fence would be and what it would look like. And then lastly, on the point about, wanting to see the parking structures and architectural examples of area D and area A, this is somewhat of a challenge, and I know this plan commission struggles with this, and you're not the only one. There's other plan commissions that do too. But just making sure you get what you think you're going to get, and how do you make sure that you're going to get what you think you're going to get when you approve a project. And the tough thing with area D and area A is that they are both very much dictated by, the architecture is going to be very much dictated by whoever the user is that actually constructs those uses, just like a hotel brand. I mean, there's no way you're going to design a hotel and somebody says, I like that design, I'm going to go build that hotel. I mean, that's not the way this would work. They would come to you with a hotel design that complies with the 32 overlay zone architectural standards. And if there was a problem with any of those standards, they'd have to go back through the same zoning process everybody else, has to. So that's why those weren't included. It wasn't to be evasive or sneaky. It was just impracticable, frankly, and very expensive to come up with speculative designs that no one's ever going to build. So if it's just a matter of incorporating, character examples, we could easily do that between now and when our proposal would be considered by the city council, and I'm happy to work with Ms. Bulgaric and Mr. Johns on parking structure pictures. I mean, we have examples of what it would look like. And again, those were not intentionally omitted, we just didn't have them in there. So I'm happy to do that, just learned of this today. We would appreciate having a recommendation, and then if we have to take time to work through this between now and council, that's what our preference would be.
Okay, thank you. A reminder to whoever it is that's attending virtually, we still seem to have some unmuted mics out there. Or maybe it was
Bob.
Maybe it was.
This is Jenny. I have another question for Matt, if it's okay.
Yeah, I was going to go to you and Cindy first to see if the additional commentary has generated any further comments from you, and then we'll give it a free-for-all here in the building. So go ahead, Jenny.
Okay. Matt, just one question. The Natalie Wheeler Trail, the setback for area A and area B is like 15 feet. So does that mean the buildings can be 15 feet from the right-of-way for the Natalie Wheeler Trail? And if so, is that kind of close, or what are you thinking?
So here, the concept was both Area A, which is the senior care area, and Area C, which is the pedestrian, neighborhood commercial area, are really both trail destinations. We are trying to design those pieces or set the framework so those pieces can address the trail and engage with the trail. And I don't know how much experience anyone here has with senior care type facilities and any activity really at all, but they will sit there and watch people walk by with their dogs like they're watching TV. I mean, most of them know the names of the dogs, okay? I mean,
Yeah.
And so the idea was to provide that opportunity for connection and for there to be a facility that engages with the trail and not really be protected back, from or hidden from the trail.
Right.
The setback with Area B is, of course, much greater.
Right.
And the idea was that whether we want it to be walkable, but, people are going to probably get there by car.
Okay, and I kind of thought that, but then my next question is then, are these buildings that back up to the trail going to be typical ugly backs of buildings, or are there going to be some enhancements so that they look almost like a front?
Well, under the 32 overlay zone architectural standards, they're required to be 360-degree architecture.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Before moving on to Cindy Spoljarek, let me just ask a further question regarding the Area A building. You described how people would likely be out and trying to engage with trail users and know their pets. In blowing up that section, the big part of it says it's a memory care wing, if I could read the fuzzy pixelated type correctly. That doesn't sound like residents that would be likely to be out watching dogs and learning their names.
Well, it's a campus. I think that's one of the uses, yeah.
So there would be things that are not reflected on the concept plan that residents in the more remote from the trail parts of the building theoretically would be encouraged to use and be those folks that you now describe.
Correct.
All right. Cindy Spoljarek, any further thoughts regarding some of your concerns now that Matt has addressed things a little further?
Still have the same concerns. I will say, and it's something I didn't bring up at the beginning of my comments because I wanted to see if anyone else had these comments or if it was just me. In the architecture for the apartments, and I know the petitioners are aware of this because I said to them from the outset before they filed, apartments were not a use that we were looking forward to on the US 31 corridor. And so for us to consider apartments would have to be something incredibly unique and special. And I think they would agree that they probably remembered my comment on that. And while I'm seeing some very high quality apartments, they look nice, I don't know that they're unique. I don't know that they're very different from anything else we actually are building currently. Might have a few little details that are different, but in general, while they're high quality, I don't think they're very unique. And there was some kind of disconnect in my brain when I was looking between what they were showing in the imagery with the photos versus what they were showing in the drawings. And to me, it just wasn't meshing up. But I'm not hearing anyone else have that concern. So I just thought I'd throw that back out there just in case someone else shares that. But it was one of my concerns that I spoke to Matt about today. That's it.
Anybody that might share that concern want to jump in now? I was going to look perhaps to Mike Johns first for those of us that are in the building, if there's any council-related concerns that parallel Cindy's or anything else that you'd like to offer.
Sorry, it's muted. I'm still just a little concerned with the garages, what they're going to look like. So that would help me a lot. The apartments, I like the design. I think it looks good, okay? I'm good with it. I don't see any other issues.
Yeah, just as a note, I mean, those apartments were designed, I mean, actually architecturally designed for this site by our architect, who's standing by if we need him, but we're excited about this, and maybe it's not being communicated as well as it could be or maybe it's just a stylistic preference difference, but we're very proud of the design, and I can't think of another project that looks like it, so.
Yeah, Commissioner, if I may virtually interrupt, can you hear me okay?
Sure, go ahead.
Oh, thank you so much, and pardon the interruption virtually, but my name is Scott Morton, and I'm with Smith G Studio. We are the architects and land planners for the project, and I really appreciate all of the commissioners' commentary throughout the process, and tonight included. I did want to add that there were some really great comments regarding, the future design of blocks A and E, and I think Matt described that well. My firm, we do a lot of hotel work and hospitality, as well as some medical and assisted, senior housing from all levels, from active adult to more controlled environments with memory care facilities. And those two uses, as Matt stated, are extremely operator guided. And so what's important to note, though, is while we can't predict the exact design of the building, what we are going to hold to those operators is that it's cohesive with the rest of the development. And, we want everything, all the mixed uses throughout Leonard Commons to have a cohesive aesthetic from the residential to the commercial and hospitality included. But those partners still need to be at the table to move that forward in their particular brand and market design. And I also appreciate the comment about the garages. The garages are an amenity for residents that want a covered parking area. The garages will be a accessory use, of course, to the main building. They will be one-story garages with very low-sloped roof forms. So they're very small height property or buildings, detached, that will also be cladded in the facade materials that will be in the same vernacular as the residential buildings. We will be happy to provide further detail on the garages moving forward, but the idea is that they would be treated much the same, in the same style and materiality as the residential structures and quality. I think the apartments in general, we're very excited to work on. We do multifamily all over the country, and we really want to understand what's unique to this market. My brother-in-law lives in Westfield down the street, so it's an interesting coincidence, and he talks to me all the time. And we've really been wanting to understand the local vernacular and the market, and we're really excited to provide something of high quality for the residents of Westfield. And we really think that the residential addition is going to be a welcome component of a truly vibrant mixed-use community at this really signature location in the community. So I just want to thank everyone for their time and quality input, and I'm happy to answer any other questions you have. Thank you.
Thank you for your input. Do any of the commissioners have further comments? Those of us that are here in the building where we can see each other and look around and not step on somebody's comments?
I'm not sure if this is a question or a comment. I guess it's a question in terms of, not about your design that you're proposing, but we heard several things this evening in terms of updates based on comments that would then supersede all the exhibits. Would it be fair and accurate to characterize those, as you're looking for a recommendation tonight, as a verbal commitment that we could then roll in and reference everything that was just on the record summarily that way?
I'm happy to do that.
Okay.
Anyone else?
Yeah, just briefly, one, because I forgot to mention it earlier, that I very much so appreciate your work with the neighbors to the north and the extra buffering. I think that'll be fantastic. Always want to make sure any project is a good neighbor. But then just for reference to the apartments, I mean, by themselves, I always have concern with apartments, but again, with this feeding into the philosophy of live, work, play, I think it'll be a good cohesive development. And in terms of architecture, I think it looks beautiful. Just one question regarding apartments. Do you know how many units per structure there'll be?
24.
24? Okay. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
And this is for informational purposes. I realize you can't regulate this, but our expected rents are in the $1,150 to $1,550 range. So, I mean, these are top-of-the-line apartments.
Any other comments that anybody cares to bring forward? If not, petitioner is looking for a recommendation to council. There are at least a couple of items from the use list that were brought up earlier about the hospital and heliport and the tavern and nightclub that need to come off. I'm not sure how to
Would you like me to state?
categorize all
Would
the
you like me to
others
state them?
that, yeah, that
I'll
would
try.
need to be part of whatever recommendation we would forward to council.
We would be happy to eliminate hospital heliport from Area D as a permitted use, tavern nightclub from Area C as a permitted use, eliminate the reduction of open space from 10 feet, or 10%, what is set forth in, we can just delete that provision, I guess, out of the PUD, and we'll default to the 20% that's normally required. Does that do it, Pam? That one? Okay. And then Area D, building height, that's up to you folks. If we need to commit to a 60-foot limitation, we will, but we would prefer not to. And then we would commit to working with Ms. Spalgeric to incorporate whatever illustrative exhibits needed to get her where she needs to be before the council meeting, if that's appropriate.
And Mike Johns.
And Mike Johns. Oh, and the parking structures.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Unless anybody has further thoughts
I think there was
that were
also,
things that,
oh, I'm so sorry, Bob. There was mention of a fence.
It's incorporated already.
Oh, okay.
That's okay. I may not have been clear when I was explaining that, but that's in, section 6.2,
Okay.
and it's shown on the transition exhibit too.
so we're looking for a motion incorporating Matt's comments. I, for one, would appreciate, and I think it'd be appropriate to not limit the building D, Area D building to 60 feet, but feel that all the others are good things that we should have. Whoever's making a
I
motion.
agree with not
can-
limiting the 60 feet.
So do you want to make the motion which would not include that limitation, but all the other things that Matt has enumerated?
See if this works. I'll make a motion for approval of 2102-PUD-04, the Lantern Commons PUD, with the additional verbal commitments from the petitioner here tonight, without the 60-foot restriction.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it. Mike
Mike
Johns.
Johns? We have a motion from Victor McCartney and a second from Mike Johns. Will staff please call the roll?
Mr. Horkay?
Yes.
Mr. Johns?
Yes.
Dr. Kelleher?
Yes.
Mr. Maui?
Yes.
Mr. McCarty?
Yes.
Ms. Spalgeric?
Yes.
Ms. Berkman?
Yes.
Mr. Graham?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you. Rest of our agenda items tonight are public hearings. First up being the Bridgewater PUD amendment for Culvers,
Matt, would you mind reading that?
and that is 2007-PV-07. And if I remember correctly, this is one that we do have the option perhaps of, if there are no significant comments, forwarding a recommendation tonight.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Members of the commission, Pam Howard with the Community Development Department. Before you this evening for a public hearing, we have an amendment to the Bridgewater PUD district to accommodate a new Culver's restaurant. This 2-acre site is located on the west side of Gray Road, north of 146th Street, and was zoned the Bridgewater PUD in 2004. The proposed amendment would modify the permitted uses to allow a fast food restaurant and also incorporate a concept plan, building elevation exhibits, as well as signage exhibits for the site. Public hearing was held for this item at your July 6th APC meeting. However, a second public hearing is required as the petition has been continued for longer than 6 months. This item was properly noticed and advertised for a public hearing tonight, and if the Plan Commission is satisfied with the petition, then the petitioner would request a recommendation this evening. Can I have Matt Skelton on behalf of the petitioner to present, after which both he and I will be available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Matt, the floor is yours again.
Good evening, members of the commission. For your record, Matt Skelton with Church Hill and Antrim, 116 North Union Street here in Westfield. With me this evening is Mark Jenkins and Tony Halsey towards the back of the room with Kite Realty Group and CRG Bridgewater LLC. I think Pam has adequately oriented you to the site. Some of you may remember this, some of you may not. But I think we had our public hearing, had some good input, really didn't have any remonstrance. We were still working with the Bridgewater Club at the time on finalizing some exhibits, which have been finalized. And we, at that time, we previewed for you the likely changes that would be happening to the PUD. We had received some early feedback regarding our architectural elevations and a desire to incorporate some additional enhancement to give it more of a Bridgewater feel, a higher-end Bridgewater feel. We highlighted that the site plan would likely change in order to address some curbside pickup opportunities that had been identified even at that time. I mean, that was the summer of last year. And then the likely addition of an outdoor amenity area, which is to be known as Weber Park, which is the square on the right side of our site. And so with that, I mean, what you have before you substantially and very narrowly defines this request for this specific lot and for this specific building and exhibits. So we're at the detailed development plan stage here. I know we're in zoning, but that's how far into this we've waded. The changes that, I'll just briefly highlight, the changes that have been made since we were last before you. As I mentioned, Section 3 of the PUD ordinance was revised to narrowly provide for the development of this site for this use. The concept plan was updated. There's two concept plans. There's two pieces of this concept plan. One is the zoomed out version that you have here, and one is the zoomed in version for the Culver's site itself. Just to highlight, if you might go back to the other plan, this has taken some work, but towards the top of this page, you'll see the outdoor seating area. There's a pavilion shown in an exhibit to the top of this page with some specifications. And we show in the concept plan below where it would be located. We've also committed with Bridgewater, we have an agreement with Bridgewater to landscape this area and really make it a park-like setting here. That doesn't mean we're not putting any landscaping on our site. That's just, we're going to comply with the city's ordinances. We just haven't shown all that on this plan. If the zoomed in plan, if you don't mind, the two things I would highlight here, the outdoor seating area, at the time we were before you last, we didn't exactly know what that was going to look like, and so we do now, so we're showing you. And then in addition to that, and in response to many lessons learned over the last year plus, this site has been reconfigured to avoid some of the problems that other restaurants have experienced during high pickup demand times. We're hoping that those times go past, but you never know. So that's why you see 2 lanes. This will protect from traffic confusion on the site. In addition, there's a pull-off area towards the left side of the exhibit that was shown in the previous plan that you saw, but that has not changed. And so that's really the other highlighted change that I would cover. And then if you look at the building elevations, please. The building elevations have been revised and resubmitted. There's a substantial increase in the amount of masonry that is included on this building. And it's hard, I know, to make it out. If you zoom in on your exhibits that you have on your computer, you can tell what's masonry and what's not. But a lot of what you see, especially that darker shade, that's brick, and then there's masonry there where right there. And then I think you can see on the other elevations too, there's the pillars, the stone pillars or architectural effects have been extended all the way to the roof, and that was not the case before. Also, gooseneck lights fixtures were incorporated into the design to carry the Bridgewater Marketplace theme through. Bridgewater has reviewed these plans and approved these plans, and they're happy with the consistency with our architecture, with the quality of what Bridgewater has done. Also with the outdoor dining areas and the creating of Weber Park, which was a big item for them. So with that, I'll stop talking. We can hold our hearing, and I'm happy to respond to any questions that you have, either now or after the hearing.
Thank you. We will open a public hearing on this at 8:03. Do we have any cards, staff?
We do not.
We do not. And do we have any evidence of email correspondence?
Nope, we do not have any emails thus far.
All right. We will look at each other for a couple of minutes while we give anybody virtually attending an opportunity to jump in. And if you can't type fast enough, at least send us a note that says, "I'm typing, I'll get to you." But we'll wait just a little while and then close the public hearing. We'll go another 30 seconds or so and then close the public hearing. It is now 8:05. For lack of any input here, we'll close the public hearing, and we'll poll the commission for any comments, if there are any, starting with Andre Maui.
I was glad to see that the lessons learned from the last year have been captured in this updated traffic plan based on the experiences we've all seen around here. I looked for that right away, and I could see that that was definitely an influence. I feel like the thing that's left after that then is maybe to be more intentional about defining what the pedestrian ways would be. For example, from the restaurant structure over to the outdoor dining pavilion. With the need to accommodate the amount of traffic as you've done here, it kind of leaves a bit of a Frogger approach to try to get people from point A to point B. And maybe, I don't know if it's markings or if it's gonna be some, some masonry pathways laid in, but something to help pedestrians and vehicular traffic get along. Thank you.
Thank you. Victor McCarty.
I'll once again echo Mr. Maui's comments, and in him mentioning that kind of sparked the whole Portillo's type idea of it's the same general design of having consideration for pedestrians, as this is a very heavy walkable area. So yeah, just pedestrian safety, and I'll show my appreciation for the pergola type area. I think that's fantastic. So thank you.
Thank you. Cindy Spoljarek.
I would agree with those prior two comments, so thank you very much. I do have a few additional things to bring up, and none of these will be new to Matt. I had an issue with the roof line, with the way that the parapets are done. I know with our State Road 32 overlay standards, it would typically be required more to have the parapets built into the roof line if you're going to have a flat roof, and I feel like these are a bit two-dimensional as opposed to three-dimensional with the way you can see the backs of some of the parapets. It just doesn't seem to be the best way to do that. It still seems like we could do something better there. But also, Matt, I thought we talked about the monument sign you were requesting. It's still showing a 15-foot long monument sign in the exhibits, and you said that was not supposed to be 15 feet. So just another question in there, because I guess it was supposed to be much smaller, and I thought 15 feet would be far too big for this setting for a monument sign. I'm not sure how big Christian Brothers is. I just pulled that up. It does not appear to be that big, but maybe I'm wrong. It just seems a little too sizable. And also, again, speaking about the pedestrians, this is obviously a golf cart community. It's going to be heavily trafficked with pedestrians, bikes, and golf carts. And so how to park those as well on the site, I think, is going to be important. And so another factor to consider in that site plan. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Kristen Berkman.
I don't have anything extra to add to those comments. I think they've all been good comments that I concur with. Thank you.
Thank you. Randy Graham.
No questions, comments, other than I'm glad to see this come up to move forward. That's it.
Thank you. Mike Johns.
I'd just like to agree with the maybe possible need for the pedestrian walkway, if some way to delineate that, and also encourage some golf cart parking. That's it.
Thank you. Dr. Kelleher.
Nothing to add. I agree with the other comments that have been made. Thank you.
Thank you. I concur as well. Lack of golf cart designated kinds of spaces in a community that's encouraging that seems like it would be a good thing to add. But obviously they can park in any space that a car can park in, but it might be helpful if they had their own. Regardless, if there's no further comments, we didn't have any public hearing comments. Does anybody care to offer a motion to go ahead and make a recommendation on this to City Council?
This is Kelleher. I'll make a motion to send a positive recommendation to the City Council on 2007-PUD-07.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Victor, thank you. It's been moved and seconded to send a favorable recommendation. Will staff please call the roll?
Mr. Johns?
Yes?
Dr. Kelleher?
Yes.
Mr. Maui?
Yes.
Mr. McCarty?
Yes.
Ms. Boljaric? Ms. Bergman?
Yes.
Mr. Graham?
Yes.
Mr. Horkay?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Moving on, public hearing item number 2, Harmony PUD amendment for the sign, which is the item that we approved the waiver of our standard at the beginning of the meeting, so this can proceed. Caleb?
Good evening, members of the commission. For the record, Caleb Ernest with the Community Development Department. The item presented before you tonight is an amendment to the Harmony Planned Unit Development District. This area addressed by the amendment is approximately 1.35 acres and is currently zoned the Harmony PUD District. The area is located at 1367 South Waterleaf Drive, approximately northwest of 146th Street and Ditch Road, also north of the CVS. The PUD amendment proposes modifying the sign standards to allow a monument sign for the Kitty Academy site. This item was introduced at the February 8th City Council meeting. This item is up for a public hearing tonight, has been properly noticed and advertised. Staff has received public comments, which have been provided in the public comment exhibit. And I believe Josh Rogers with American Construction Point and other representatives are here to present details of the project. They are available to answer any questions, as am I, should you have any for staff. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, members of the commission. My name is Josh Rogers with American Construction Point, 925 River Road, Indianapolis, 46240. I just want to appreciate the waiver of the notice standards. The initial applicant resigned about 2 weeks ago, so in the process of noticing this again. Okay, I apologize. Again, I just want to reiterate our appreciation for suspending the notice requirements to allowing for 7 days for the wire sign posting. The initial applicant did resign about 2 weeks ago, so we're playing a little bit of catch up on this at the moment. A little bit of background on this: the Kitty Academy is under construction and is currently substantially complete at the moment. I believe they are very close to getting a certificate of occupancy. They are requesting a PUD amendment for a monument sign, as the Harmony PUD does not allow for individual monument signs and has the consolidated sign along 146th Street. The Kitty Academy is built on currently what is a single lot that has been subdivided, and that 2-lot subdivision generates a need for delineating the different uses and the different buildings that will be built on that lot. Currently, there is signage on the building, but it is a brand standard for Kitty Academy to have this monument sign, and that monument sign is actually designed to match what is existing in the roundabout on Ditch Road, and I don't recall the road north of the site. It's the intersection between Waterleaf and Ditch Road. And it has been designed to match that. Somerville Drive. At the intersection of Somerville Drive and Ditch Road, there is a monument sign that looks more or less what we are proposing. We did send an updated, simplified exhibit a few days ago. I was hoping that would get included today because there is a little bit of superfluous data on this sheet. Really, all that we are concerned with is the top left corner of this page. This is the monument sign in question, and the site plan immediately to the right is the location at the southeastern corner of the site. With this being a substantially complete structure, there's really not much more to add as far as any sort of development-wise, other than this being a brand standard, something that Kitty Academy likes to see. We also have representatives from Woodmont here as well that can add a little bit more background and why this monument sign is being requested.
Good evening, Grant. Gary with the Woodmont Company, 2100 West 7th Street, Fort Worth, Texas, 76107. We are the developer of the facility. This is actually our second Kiddie Academy in the city of Westfield. The first location at Chatham was extremely well received, and we're excited and encouraged to have been able to complete or almost complete a second facility. As Josh alluded to, the signage here is in part, the brand awareness for Kiddie Academy. It was something that, really early on, even when we had the groundbreaking, is when we started the discussions about this proposed signage with the community, some of the members here this evening. One of the early comments was, in fact, to look to the existing sign that's there, and so really, by and large, this sign does conform both in the stone material, the design, the size, the only difference of being adding that additional, what's noted as logo graphic and adjacent tenant. And I do think that is one of the key components of this sign, as Josh alluded to. And while you can't see it here on the screen, there is an additional lot that we do intend to develop. And, we've had good activity on that lot. And I think one of the components, both from a visibility but also a directional standpoint, given that the main access into that lot and then subsequently with cross access across the Kiddie Academy would be at this location. So the other component is having some brand identity for that adjacent lot to be developed there to the north as well. So again, appreciate the consideration and certainly available for any questions.
All right, thank you. This item requires a public hearing. So we will now open a public hearing at 8:17 p.m. Do we have any cards for folks in the room that would like to speak?
You do not have any cards.
No, all right. There are 3 written comments that have been received prior to the meeting and are part of our links on the agenda. We will wait momentarily here to see if anybody else wants to weigh in who might be attending virtually, and then we'll look for responses or comments from the commission. I assume there's no written comments that have populated our inbox?
Not seen
No.
any emails come in.
All right, well, it's 8:19. I will close the public hearing. And we'll seek commissioner comments, starting with Victor McCartney.
Just briefly, looking over the constituent comments, attached to it are images at night with very bright signage, as is with Kiddie Academy. So I guess my ask would just be, I'd be fine with it being a regular old monument sign, given there being a second tenant coming, just the need to have additional lighting on the monument sign. So that'd be my only ask.
Thank you. Cindy Spoljarek, do you have further comments?
No, just a similar, give back problems with the other. Thank you.
Kristen Berkman?
I'm going to agree with that on the lighting, that I don't think we need more lighting on the sign because the others are so bright. Thank you.
Thank you. Randy Graham?
No questions or comments, Mr. President.
Thank you. Mike Johns?
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Andre Maui?
Nothing for me, thanks.
Dr. Kelleher?
I would agree about the lighting. I did see the pictures that were sent in by the neighbor, and I drove out there at midnight last night and looked. And their wall sign, they have two signs, existing sign, a wall sign on the southern portion of the building, which is smaller, and one on the main face of the building, which has 4 or 5 downlit lights. But sitting there and looking from the neighbor's perspective, it was quite bright because there are also lights along the building that shine down onto the ground. I noticed that the CVS sign at the corner was not lit, so I couldn't approve a sign that had lighting. I think there's plenty of lighting there. It's also a building that is not populated at night. It's during the day when people are coming there, so I'm not sure people need direction at night with lights. And I think to be respectful to the neighbors across the way, if we do approve this, there should be no lights. I would even like to see them turn the lights on the sign that they have down, maybe off after 11 o'clock at night. So those are my 2 comments. Thanks.
Thank you. And I agree that if you were out there at midnight and found lighting on this building, if there's a time clock, maybe somebody needs to check the settings on the time clock so it will go down at 10 or 11 o'clock at night and not come back on until dusk. Do you have any responses to all the comments that you've heard?
Absolutely, no, and appreciate all the comments and consideration. Just a couple comments on the signage that is being, or the lighting comments I think that we received and we did respond to from the neighbors there were the building signage. So this is separate and apart from the signage that we're discussing this evening.
Right.
In receiving those comments, we have taken action to evaluate the timers because you're correct, the building is not populated at this point in the evening. And at the same time, there were some lights on the underside of the canopy that we're currently in the process of replacing so that they're at a lower dim. At the same time, we actually changed the building signage that was originally proposed as internally illuminated to meet the existing PUD requirements for externally illuminated signs for the building. So those goosenecks that are there are within the PUD signage requirements. So all that being said, we are addressing and will continue to address the signage on the building. At the same time, we took very great caution in looking at the existing or proposed signage, I should say, on this existing monument to be very minimal. And we do have the lighting spec we should on this plan that shows it's a downlit light that would only be illuminating what's, again, a very small area, 2.5 feet. Yes, thank you. That we would propose, and again, I think in conjunction with reducing and eliminating the building signage, the proposed location of this particular monument sign, we would ask that there be further consideration of these minimal lights to that particular monument sign.
Okay, thank you. This is here strictly for a public hearing this evening. If there's no further comments from the commission, then we'll await your return for a recommendation at that time.
Bob, it's Jenny again.
Yes, Jenny.
I just wanted to make the petitioner aware, first of all, it's a very attractive building, but I cannot approve more lights on this. Other people may be willing to do that, but I just want you to know up front that that's kind of a deal breaker for me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Moving on, next public hearing item is the Courtyards of Westfield, 2104-ODP-07 and 2104-SPP-07.
Yes, good evening, Plan Commission. For the record, Dane Crabtree with the Community Development Department. The item before you this evening is the primary plan and overall development plan for the Courtyards of Westfield, an 89-lot single-family residential development on 37.03 acres in the Courtyards of Westfield PUD. This item is scheduled for a public hearing this evening, and the department has received one comment, which was forwarded to you earlier this afternoon and has been made a part of the public comment exhibit this evening. As there are still a handful of outstanding items with the project, the petitioner is not requesting a vote this evening. Jason Coffey with EPCON is present this evening for a brief introduction, after which he will be available for questions, as well if there are questions of staff. Thank you.
Thank you. Petitioner's representative is here.
Yes, hello.
This virtually.
Is okay. Yes. Can you hear me okay? Obviously, this is I'm not present, but I'm virtual here.
We hear you loud and clear.
Great, perfect. Well, my name is Jason Coffey, and I'm with EPCON Communities, Vice President of Land Development for EPCON Corporate. address 500 Stonehenge Parkway, Dublin, Ohio, 43017. We also have a full team here tonight as well. We also have Brooks Longfellow. He's also with EPCON Communities. He is going to be our Indianapolis regional president. We have Brett Huff with Kimley Horn, who is our site engineer. And we have Linda Maneri with EMH&T, who is both our land planner and landscape architect. We do not have a formal presentation this evening. Frankly, Brett has been the main contact with working with staff. As was mentioned, there's still some items we're working through. We're very confident we're going to work with staff and get these resolved quickly. But our team is here to answer any questions. We had just obviously received approval for zoning a little over a couple months ago. But I'm really here for this evening for any questions or comments you may have this evening. So with that, I'll turn it back and we're here for your support.
Thank you. This is subject to a public hearing, which I will open at 8:26 p.m. Do we have any cards from anyone in the building?
We do not.
No. All right. We did have the one piece of correspondence from earlier, and we will now allow an opportunity for anybody attending virtually to quickly communicate to us if there are comments that they would like to have on the record from them tonight. It is now 8:29. If we do not have any emails that have quickly arrived, I will go ahead and close the public hearing. I assume we're no additional correspondence, Pam Howard?
Correct, no
Correct.
emails.
All right. The public hearing is closed at 8:29. We'll offer the floor first to Cindy Spoljaric to bring up any comments that she might have.
I don't believe I have any at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Kristen Berkman.
Thank you, Bob. I have one question on this. There is a pretty significant buffer for the neighbor when you're looking at lots 49 through 55 and 42 through 48 in the PUD, yet it looks like those lot lines run completely to that. Kevin, can you help me with that? Is that correct for this? Is it just not showing it?
Well, yeah, this is just an overall summary. Let's see. What page are we looking at?
This is Jenny. Kevin, there's a 60-foot buffer yard, which is part of the yard. Am I not correct, Mr. Coffey?
Yeah, that is correct. Yes. This is Jason Coffey. Yeah, the lot lines go all the way to the property line.
Yeah, that's right. So you can see on this page, the page on the screen before was just an overall summary of the layout, but the details are on these subsequent sheets here, so they're calling out that, yeah, 60-foot buffer yard right here.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Randy Graham.
No questions or comments.
Thank you. Mike Johns.
No questions, no comments.
Very good. Dr. Kelleher.
Can you leave the slide up? Because I was going to bring this up. I think this is a great project, and I want to thank Mr. Coffey and the other people working on this for doing that 60-foot buffer. It is part of somebody's yard, but there are also solid fences between each of these residences so that the backyard, that 60 feet, will really not be usable to them. It will be a buffer and open space. Correct, Mr. Coffey?
Yeah, that's correct. It's all passive use. We committed to put, again, between our outside courtyard areas and the adjacent home, to just point a solid fence. There's no doors in the back. There's no access to it. It is intended to be all passive yard area.
Right, and that's great. And I bring this up because later on in the evening, we're going to be looking at another project that abuts some AGSF1 in the southwest new suburban area. And I wanted to point out the excellent job that this group did in buffering that. So thank you.
Thank you. Andre Maui.
No questions or comments.
Very good. Victor.
No questions or comments. Thank you.
Thank you. I have nothing further to add as well. So if there is anything further from the petitioner that they'd like to enlighten us on, we'll go ahead and move on to the next public hearing.
Yeah, I think we're good this evening.
All right, thank you.
Great, thank you.
Move on to West Fork Whiskey, 2104-ODP-08.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President, members of the commission. Pam Howard with the Community Development Department. Before you this evening, we have an overall development plan for one lot on approximately 13 acres in the Osborne Trails PUD district. This site is located at the northeast corner of 191st Street and Horton Road and was zoned the Osborne Trails PUD in 2017 with a 2020 amendment that updated the standards to accommodate this proposed project. The property was subdivided last year as a result of the annexation of this portion of the parcel. Therefore, only an overall development plan is required at this time. A detailed development plan will be required for the proposed building at a later date. This item was properly noticed and advertised for a public hearing, and we have received no comments. I do have the petitioner on the call who is available for questions but does not plan to make a presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. That being the case with no petitioner presentation, we'll go ahead and open the public hearing for this item at 8:33 p.m. Are there any cards for folks present?
We do not have any cards.
No. All right. We'll wait for the clock to tick off a couple of minutes to give virtual attendees a chance to shoot us a note, and then we'll close the public hearing if there aren't any. If there are no further comments coming in by way of email, I will go ahead and close the public hearing now at 8:35. Starting with Cindy Spalgeric, do we have any Plan Commissioner comments?
None at this time, thank you.
Thank you. Kristen Berkman.
None, thank you.
Very good. Randy Graham.
No questions or comments.
Thank you. Mike Johns.
No questions, no comments.
Very good. Dr. Kelleher,
No questions or comments, thank you.
thank you. Andre Maui,
None for me either, thanks.
thank you. All right, Victor, pressure's on. Do you have any comments?
No questions or comments. Thank you, sir.
Nor do I. That being the case, unless the petitioner has something else they'd like to tell us, we will go ahead and move on to our next public hearing item. That would be the North Point Plat Amendment, 2104-ODP-09 and 2104-SPP-09.
Yes, thank you again. Pam Howard with the Community Development Department. Before you this evening, we have a primary plat and overall development plan amendment for one lot on 21 acres in the North Point PUD district. This site was incorporated into the North Point PUD in 2017, but wasn't included in the plat that followed. The request tonight would add it into the primary plat and overall development plan as a part of Block N, and it would later go through a secondary plat to formally combine the parcels. This item was properly noticed and advertised for a public hearing this evening, and we have not received any comments on this request. The petitioner is here tonight and available for questions, as am I if you have any of the department. Thank you.
Thank you. The petitioner is available for questions but does not plan to present.
Correct.
Okay. That being the case, we will go ahead and open public hearing on this at 8:37. I assume we have no cards,
Correct, we have no cards.
so we'll wait till 8:39 and see if there's any email correspondence that comes in. It is now 8:39. If there's no correspondence, we'll close the public hearing. Commissioner comments, starting with Kristen Berkman.
Thank you, Bob. I don't have any.
None, thank you. Randy Graham.
No questions or comments.
Thank you. Mike Johns.
No questions, no comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Kelleher.
Nothing from me, thank you.
Very good. Andre Maui.
No questions or comments.
Thank you. Victor McCarty.
No questions or comments. Thank you.
Thanks. Cindy Spoljarek.
None, thank you.
Thank you. It's unison. I have none as well. So that being the case, we will move on to the next North Point public hearing for 2104-PUD-12, Amendment 4. Pam Howard?
Yes, thank you again. Pam Howard with the Community Development Department. Before you this evening, we have the proposed Fourth Amendment to the North Point PUD, which would be applicable to the unsold Commerce Park District, which is approximately 177 acres. This PUD proposes to amend the architectural standards, specifically the facade offset requirement, also known as a building bump out requirement more commonly. This item was introduced at the March 8th City Council meeting. It has been properly noticed and advertised for a public hearing this evening. At this point, we have received one comment, which was uploaded on Friday, I believe, and is available on the agenda. I do have the petitioner's representative, Russell Brown, here to make a brief presentation, after which both he and I will be available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Brown, the floor is yours. Be sure and turn on the microphone if it got turned off previously.
Good evening, members of the commission. For the record, Russell Brown, an attorney with the law firm of Clark Quinn, Moses, Scott & Grant, 320 North Meridian Street, Suite 1100 in Indianapolis. With me tonight is also Chris Wilkes from Holiday Properties, who is part of the development team for this, this North Point project. As Pam mentioned, the request here is to add an alternative mechanism to avoid long uninterrupted facades on large structures in the North Point development. This alteration would allow for an increase between those wall offsets if alternative mechanisms are utilized. So those mechanisms do include change in materials at certain distances, roughly the 60 feet, which is required for the wall bump outs in your current ordinance, or or change in paint color or material colors in those locations. Additionally, this provides a mechanism to utilize horizontal facade changes to be acceptable in lieu of only vertical changes, so long as those comprise a certain percentage of those facade changes along those larger facades. The goal of this modification for those areas, as Pam mentioned, which are in the undeveloped or unsold Commerce Park area of North Point, is to avoid a PUD amendment on a case-by-case basis, which has been what has occurred in the past when those developments occur, and to allow developers the flexibility for larger scale developments. The development team here has as many as 3 projects in the 2021 pipeline, which would all seek to utilize the new standards for compliance on those larger facades. These 3 projects will include an investment of approximately $25 million into the North Point development. The request here are an attempt to design and construct efficient, usable buildings which can still meet the spirit of the architectural design aesthetic, which has been part of the North Point project as it's been imagined and developed over the last 5 years. Exhibit B, which is what's shown here, is an example of a facade which does comply with these new requirements. So utilizing horizontal changes, utilizing paint changes, and utilizing bump outs still as part of the overall development. So again, this does not eliminate the requirements to have those existing bump outs, but allows for further space between them. While the design team has attempted to create flexible alternatives to for those projects, the list we've included in the ordinance, proposed ordinance amendment, is certainly not exhaustive, so we would be certainly willing to consider additional alternative mechanisms to comply with the spirit and intent while providing for that flexibility for developers coming forward. I would note that the 3 previous amendments to this ordinance were all project-specific amendments, all of which were granted relief sought tonight in excess of what is being requested tonight. So all of those have facades with larger uninterrupted planes than are what are being proposed and requested tonight. So we believe that this is a reasonable and narrowly tailored request to allow the momentum of the North Point development to continue. And with that, listen to public comments and be happy to answer questions of the commission.
Thank you. I will open a public hearing on this at 8:44 p.m. Do we have any cards?
We do not have any cards.
Okay. We did receive one piece of email correspondence that has been forwarded to us, and we'll wait a couple of minutes to see if anybody else is motivated to come forward tonight and offer additional comments. I now have 8:46. In the absence of any correspondence, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing. Commissioner comments, beginning with Randy Graham.
No questions or comments.
Thank you. Moving on to Mike Johns.
I've built several warehouses in my career, and I understand what the issue is. So, yeah, I understand. That's all.
Thank you. Dr. Kelleher.
I agree with Mr. Johns. I understand it. I'm trying to understand the ordinance, though, if you can help me. It does not eliminate the bump outs totally. It simply allows them to move farther apart as long as other criteria are placed. Is that correct?
Is that more for staff to respond? Or are you looking for Mr. Brown?
I think Mr. Brown, because I read this and I thought they were eliminating the bump outs entirely, and it sounds like in Mr. Brown's description that they're simply moving them farther apart as long as there's some interesting material in between. Is that correct?
Yes, Dr. Keller, that's the intent. I apologize. That's the intent of the ordinance.
Okay. So these tall structures in the dark, outlined in dark, those are the bump outs?
Yeah, those are the bump outs here. So they meet, they're approximately on this location, on this elevation, those are approximately 115 feet between the bump outs. So they do expand that, but partially utilizing the paint color change, using that change in elevation. That's how we believe we're complying with the ordinance as presented to you this evening.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Andre Maui.
I appreciate that clarification because I first read it that they were being eliminated, then I thought they were being expanded, and I wanted to make sure I understood that correctly. To me, material changes and paint color changes are on two different levels in terms of what a variation would be. And what I was looking for, and maybe I need to read this closer to see if there's any better description of a paint color change. There's however many umpteen shades of off-white, for example. Is there something in here that makes it substantial enough to be like what this example shows? That's my question. That's all I had.
I would say that's a great clarification. The intent is not to have white 1 to white 1.1 to meet the intent of the ordinance. So we can work with staff to clarify that.
Okay, very good, thank you. On Victor McCarty.
No questions or comments. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Cindy Spoljarek.
Well, I've been thinking about this because I know it has been a problem for developers. At least it would be more cost effective for them to consider some other things. But I also want to bring up this fact. Where you're wanting to apply this is not secondary facades, it's the primary facade. And these areas are within the East Street corridor and also the Grassy Branch Road corridor that now is going to be integrated into the project. And so factoring that in, and given these are important arterials, it's something that kind of troubles me. If this was on secondary facades that weren't visible to these arterials, it'd be one thing. And to not have the structural bump outs does actually take away the feel of the nature of it. I get what you're trying to do, and it does break it up, but not the same way the structural parts do. And again, I had the same problem when I read it, and maybe there needs to be some language change, because I read it as you were trying to take away any of the offsets, or it would be a possibility anyway to have none. So we probably need to look at that further.
Are you complete?
I'm sorry about that. Yes, Bob.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Kristen Berkman.
I was going to ask the same question that Mrs. Spoljarek had regarding the road frontages, so she's already commented on that, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Like Dr. Kelleher, I thought I had initially understood this would be more eliminating, which if there were distinguishing enough features, I think I could have been okay with it. I do feel it's very important that the kinds of representations that we're looking at on the screen all be included, that the height elevation change is equally as important as all the other elements, that if it was just a top of building that was continuous at one elevation with these kinds of changes, I don't think it would make the same impact. So it is critical that we have the whole package, but otherwise, I don't have any further comments. So unless anybody else has any further, we'll go ahead and move on to our next public hearing for the Bonterra PUD 2104-PUD-11.
Thank you again, Mr. President. Members of the commission, Pam Howard with the Community Development Department. Before you this evening for a public hearing, we have a proposed new PUD district to be known as Bonterra. This 28-acre site is located on the south side of State Road 32, about a quarter-mile west of Gray Road. The proposed development includes a mix of general office and townhome development with a maximum of 150 dwellings. The ordinance includes standards and exhibits to guide the development of the real estate. This item was introduced at the March 8th City Council meeting, and a neighbor meeting was held on March 24th. A summary of that meeting is included as an exhibit on the agenda. This item was properly noticed and advertised for a public hearing. There are no public comments shown on the agenda, but we did receive one around 6 p.m., which will be forwarded to you once the public hearing is open. And I do have the petitioner, Representative Matt Skelton, here to present, after which both he and I will be available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome back.
For the record, Matt Skelton, 116 North Union Street, Churchill in Antrim. With me this evening with MI Homes of Indiana is John Isaacs. We're here this evening to share our plans with you. This site is located immediately east of the Indiana Members Credit Union, shown on the picture here. People might be familiar with that. Midland Trace Trail abuts the site on the south side. The property is zoned general office today, which is not a very commonly seen zoning classification, but it allows, as you might imagine, various office type of uses. It also permits multifamily uses. We are not proposing a multifamily proposal in a traditional multifamily sense. This is a townhome community. These would be individually owned attached homes. Along 32, we have preserved some of the real estate as part of this proposal as general office, which that area is shown as commercial on the concept plan, defaults to the 32 overlay zone, which has been specifically modified for this site. And I'll hit some of those highlights, but you may have noticed that when you went through the PUD. We've received a lot of really good input along the way, which has helped shape our plan. The comprehensive plan contemplates this area as local commercial, which does include a recommendation for use of attached residential as a transitional use between more intensive uses and less intensive uses. And so we've done that. There's single family to the south of us. We had an opportunity to meet several of our neighbors at our neighbor meeting, and I'll provide you some details on that. The area to the east of the site is significantly encumbered by pipeline easements and a transmission line easement, and it really is difficult to develop really for almost any other purpose than something that can plug into little spaces. So I think I'll cover, if you want to put up the townhome elevations. The property as proposed includes two different types of townhomes, 2-unit or 2-level townhomes and 3-level townhomes. And on the concept plan, I don't expect you to be able to quickly skip back and forth, but the more tan colored ones on the interior are the 3-level, and the ones towards the perimeter are the 2-level. The idea to even further transition within that use. The exterior of the homes and the grounds and the snow removal will all be commonly maintained by the Property Owners Association, just like one would find in a condominium association. The home elevations are incorporated into the PUD by reference. These are the homes that we will intend to build here. There is no vinyl or aluminum siding permitted within the PUD ordinance. We do tie into the Midland Trace Trail in a couple of places that are shown on the concept plan. We have reviewed these plans with the city's parks director, and he is very supportive of this concept. It was a fairly warm reception. I thought he felt like we were adequately connecting to the trail. And we also, by including the connections that we show, the one in the middle is going to be really difficult to accomplish, and that there's a chance it could go away, just as a highlight. But at a minimum, the two on the right and left will in fact be there, and we've developed some landscaping plans that show those entrances. The easement encumbrances there are becoming a very real challenge. And the drainage is kind of fixed, just for reference. That's where it goes today. If anybody's walked that section of trail seasonally, that fills up with water now. It's just not controlled very well. So this would legitimize that, increase the size of it, and control the rate of runoff and handle that much better. We're also planning, there's a stand of trees in the area. We'll probably change the name park on this plan. I know that's a touchy word right now for the city. It is a neighborhood park, a neighborhood amenity. It's not intended to be a city park. But there's a nice stand of trees there that we will be preserving. The ordinance does not specifically state that, but it will. It will. So with that, I think let's see here. Yeah, we have prepared some exhibits. Are you able to pull those up? We recently submitted some exhibits we're working on. You may have noticed in your PUD there's a couple of exhibits that are referred to that are not in the PUD. We were trying to refine those and make sure they're perfect before presenting them. We've got 4 of 6 that we plan to incorporate in some way or form, but the 2 of the exhibits show the trail connections along the Midland Trace Trail, and then 2 of them show our building landscaping for the 2-level units and also the 3-level buildings. And then we're working on an entrance exhibit and that's taking some time because there's some artistic work that has to be done on the sign entrance feature. And then there's a buffer exhibit that we plan to incorporate, which shows the buffering area between the existing commercial to our west and our proposal. Is it not available?
No, I think another change is being made to the agenda at the same time, and
Got it.
taken over mine, so I will forward it.
Oh, my apologies. Well, so coming to a theater near you will see the 4 exhibits that we have submitted incorporated into the PUD, and it provides for the landscaping zoom-in detail for the 2 types of buildings, the 2 entrances. There will be one for the entrance, and then one for the main entrance, and then one for the buffer area just south of the commercial area along the townhomes. We did have a neighbor meeting on the 24th of March. We lucked out. It was a beautiful evening, and we were able to do it in the pavilion at Simon Moon Park. We had 5 of our neighbors stop by. It was a pretty brief meeting, and I think the reception of the project was pretty warm. I think folks were happy to learn that this was going to be a similarly scaled residential project transitioning from the residential to the south instead of something more intense like commercial. There was a question raised about the extent to which we would be removing existing vegetation along the Midland Trace Trail. And we don't think much, if any, of the existing vegetation along the Midland Trace Trail, along that north side is on this property, but we have no intention of removing it if it is, and we certainly can't remove vegetation on the city's property. So with that, MI is eager to create this new trailside townhome community. These trailside locations for townhomes that lend themselves to townhomes are fewer and far between than one might think. They've proven to be very popular locations for townhomes that do very well, and so MI is very excited about this location. With that, I will stop talking, and I'm happy to respond to questions either before or after your hearing. Thank you.
Thank you. We will tackle the public hearing first. Open it at 9:02 p.m. And we'll be forwarding us one piece of correspondence. Are there any?
Yes, I will be forwarding that email right now, and as of right now, we do not have any cards for in-person speakers.
Thank you. I believe you've all received the most recent email communication. It is now 9:05. If there isn't anything further, I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing. And we'll go around on commissioner comments, starting with Mike Johns.
Matt, how many units are here again?
What is illustrated here is 142. There's 150 cap in the PUD ordinance.
All right. And roughly, what's the breakdown between 3-story and 2-story?
And this may settle out a little, so please don't depend on this. We're shifting buildings around with some of these easement things we're quarreling with, but as shown there, 48 three-story, and the balance is two-story.
All right, right. Given the property, I think you've done a good job of making the best use of it with the pipelines running through, so.
Thank you.
Yeah. That's my only comment.
Thank you. Moving on, Dr. Kelleher.
First of all, I'd like to say that this is exactly what we wanted to see on 32 commercial, and then some multifamily transitioning into residential as a nice way to transition and buffer. Am I still echoing in your ears?
No, you're doing good.
Okay. I have a couple of questions. I cannot recall, Matt, whether SFA requires 360-degree architecture like multifamily does. If not, what are the backs of these going to look like? I know the fronts are very attractive and have some masonry on them, but what about the back? That's one question. The second question is, there was something mentioned about not doing an 8-foot asphalt path, and I wasn't sure where that was supposed to be, if it was on 32 or what the concern was about that. And my third comment is, I think you've done a great job in arranging this site due to your constraints, but we also wanted 32 to be an employment corridor. So I am wondering if those townhomes on the eastern portion of the property on 32, if that might be better served as more commercial for our tax base. So those are my three questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to Andre Maui.
Nothing additional, thanks.
Thank you. Victor McCarty.
Just two things briefly. One, we've seen exhibits, examples of the townhomes. Just when you come back to us, possibly being able to see some commercial examples, if any standards, et cetera. And then just two, because I live in an MI development, and after everything being built, there's still construction debris within our neighborhood. So especially with this being backed up to Midland Trace Trail, just appreciate another nice comb over once things are built to make sure all construction debris is taken care of. So thank you.
Thank you. Cindy Spoljarek.
A few things. I did mention a lot of these at the council introduction, but I'll mention them again. And I know that the Indiana Members Credit Union entrance there is a private kind of street and not a public one. But I was so hoping that that could be a shared access, because adding another 2 curb cuts into this project is not something that we want to be adding onto 32. We're trying to reduce the number of curb cuts, not add. Also, the state is planning on expanding all the way to Noblesville, State Road 32. So this will likely be 4 lanes through here. So, even more traffic. And I think there really is a need to have that path at the front. So I was concerned that it was going to be not installed. The other thing I really wanted to ask about, those units that are right up on 32, I really just have a problem with that. Like Jenny said, having 32 be commercial and then having this kind of dotted with 2 different residential products. And like in the townhomes, I'm seeing a rear that's kind of angled toward 32 for the back of those townhomes. And then also you'd be able to see the rears of the 2-story. And then I don't think that's the best thing we could do up there on 32. I know you're constrained, but it just seems awkward to me. I don't know how that's going to fit in with the rest of the community. I would like to see the rear elevations, and I do like the majority of the rest of the project. I do like to see the townhomes in the interior, just due to their height. I think that works better in the area. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Kristen Berkman.
Thank you, Bob. I agree with Dr. Kelleher and Mrs. Spoljarek on this point on 32. we've really got to start looking at where we can get some commercial tax dollars in the city, and Kevin's mentioned an initiative of looking at the comp plan for that. Here's an opportunity to have some type of commercial building, employment, and we've got housing. So I agree that I'd really like to see that area up there contributing in a commercial way. I do agree that I like the transition because we do have the single-family homes behind this to have the townhomes. I'm just this is a personal opinion comment on the architecture of these townhomes. The 3-story and the 2-story, for me, don't really look like they go together. And I mean, if the petitioner would like to comment on that just from the architecture, I personally like the 3-story, but somehow the 3-story just doesn't really go with this 2-story for me, and kind of the Craftsman farmhouse of the 2-story, and then the 3-story just looks a little bit different with the brick and shake. So I guess if you're doing something, I feel like everything should somewhat coordinate in that neighborhood, and maybe other commissioners don't share that concern, but I just feel like architecturally this isn't like really going together really as well as I'd like. And then Victor brought up the point about the commercial. I know there'll be parking around that as well, and this is a preliminary plan, but it would be nice to see more detailing on what's proposed there from an architecture standpoint as well. I do like that you put green space in with these residents and that you're connecting to the trail. I think that that's all really positive. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you. Randy Graham?
No questions or comments, thank you.
Thank you. Several of the previous comments are kind of hot button issues for me as well. Not putting as much commercial as the frontage will allow and keeping the residential back is certainly one of them. I do echo your concern, Kristen, that these look like housing products that somehow or other need to get shuffled together in a better way to look like they belong in the same place. Because right now they seem kind of disjointed in relation to each other. So I would encourage heavily trying to figure out some way to modify one, the other, or both architectural elements to make them more compatible. And I'm not sure how to suggest any more strongly that 32 needs to be commercial, but certainly feel it does, and it's perhaps more of a public works council community development thing, but if there was any way of working with the adjacent property owner to the west to try to get the access without creating more potential crash points along 32, I would certainly think that development could be a whole lot better off as a result. So that would be a wrap on my comments. If there are any further comments from the petitioner or anybody else from the commission, we can hear those, or if not,
I've got two things that I
Okay.
can be a little bit responsive
Sure,
on.
please.
One is, thank you for the input. That is very helpful. And we'll take what we've heard this evening and work through those things and come back with a revised proposal. But the one question was asked about the asphalt path. We have worked with the city engineer on this, and it's not the 8-foot asphalt path doesn't connect to anything right now, and so we're not proposing to do away with the 30-foot dedication for the trail. That would still occur in the normal platting process. We would just propose that we not be required to install an 8-foot asphalt trail to nowhere, because the property to the west is developed and the property to the east may develop someday, but the part that doesn't have the asphalt trail. I think MI is a trail advocate. That's why they picked this site, but would like to invest in infrastructure that will have some value. And there may be some value in extending a connection from the trail there that leads up to 32 over to an entrance. But we'll kind of walk through that and talk through that and talk and circle back with the city engineer. But that's the nature of that issue.
Yeah, and this is John Nail. I'm on the call as well. The 8-foot trail along 32 is road impact fee creditable, so ultimately the city does pay for that infrastructure to be installed. We have reimbursed developers. I would prefer to, if the path goes to nowhere, to not require the developer to install it in this location and hang on to those road impact fees for investments in other areas of the city that perhaps we get better bang for our buck on.
And then just secondly, the idea of commercial in that northeast corner is that entrance is one of the most fixed aspects of this plan. It must intersect at Sandpiper at Sanibel Circle, shown there on the plan. And it really perfectly bifurcates that already cut up little piece. It's going to be really difficult to use it. I pointed that out in my initial presentation for really any other purpose from a commercial perspective. And these homes on that limited frontage just fit nicely in there. Now, can they be reoriented and can that area be reworked? We can certainly look at that, but that's actually why that was selected to be that way. All of the most usable and cleanest economic development area of the site has been preserved along 32. And just to keep in mind, we're not asking for that area to be zoned. It's already zoned GO. I mean, and the 32 overlay zone already applies there. So the examples of the architecture that one might see there is in the 32 overlay zone. I mean, there's pages of it. And so I'm happy to walk through that. We do not have any, believe me, if we had a user identified for those areas, they might even be leading the charge. They may have a development plan or something in front of you, but this land has been zoned for GO purposes for many, many years. And we received a message early on, loud and clear, that the city would like to preserve along the 32 corridor, preserve that. And so that's what this PUD is designed to do. So I may ask I'd just like a little bit of clarification. I mean, does that give you what you need, or is there more information that you are hoping to get?
I don't know if anyone else has comments, but I think in regards to just knowing what it's going to look like, I think that makes sense of, you can't predict if you don't have a particular developer to come in or business to come in. But yeah, it's just, me being a visual person, I like to see what's going to be a frontage. But I can definitely suspect that it'll be something similar to the bank next door or, down the way with the Wendy's area, Kroger area. So
yeah, the uses are substantially limited in the GO district. They're very narrow. I think there was one question about, I think multifamily is permitted in the GO district, and so we can talk to the appropriate parties and find out if that's important to them. But again, that's a conversation we have not had yet.
And then anything that does go in here, I would assume would come through our consent agenda to take a look at it anyway, so.
Yeah, there'd be a primary plat and overall development plan, which has a hearing. And then in addition to that, there'd be a detailed development plan that would be on a consent agenda beyond that. Yep. Thank you, folks. Sorry.
This is Jenny. Can I insert something else here?
Sure.
Please do so.
Regarding the asphalt path, I know that in certain situations where there is development and there's nothing that it would connect to on either side, they've gotten a waiver that says they will put it in when those developments on either side of them come in. I don't know if this is one of them, because I suspect that here, rather than doing an asphalt path along 32, we're using the Midland Trail as our path. So just a thought. Thank you.
Not sure if I have a question or not. I'm thinking about what Dr. Keller just mentioned. It was not at all uncommon to allow deferral of when paths would be added. And in thinking back to when the IMCU development came along, I was trying to recall, and that's been so many years ago, but I believe we did have some sort of a discussion about the fact that the trail would ultimately be in use back there. And it almost seems like there might have been some request that was part of the credit union's development, that there would need to be some north-south connection to the trail whenever it is that it happened. Does that sound familiar to anybody else in this room?
Yes, that does sound familiar. We'd have to look into the history and see. It was either that one or the building behind
Yeah.
that came up.
Yeah, I'm certain however many years ago that was, and I've slept since then. But I think that's something that really needs to be delved into. I get your point about the constraints and how we really don't want to not align roads on the opposite side of a new development so that we don't create very dangerous cross points. Just still seems like a creative civil engineer might be able to figure out some way to keep the residential further south and figure out a way to keep some commercial, but we'll not harp on that any further. If there are any other comments from anyone or from on the commission or from the petitioner, we'll go ahead and move on from Bonterra and have the public hearing for Sycamore Glen PUD.
Thank you.
I just wanted to let you know, we were unable to forward those attachments remotely. So I will get those emailed to you tomorrow, and we will also upload them to the agenda so anyone listening can also view those additional attachments tomorrow.
All right, very good, thank you. So Sycamore, item 2104-PUD-13. Caleb?
Good evening, Commission. For the record, Caleb Ernest with the Community Development Department. The item presented before you tonight is a change of zoning request from the AGSF1 district to the Sycamore Glen Planned Unit Development District. This area is approximately 28.5 acres and is currently zoned the AGSF1 district. The area is located generally south and adjacent to 159th Street and west of Town Road. This PUD proposes modifying the general regulations, development, architectural, landscaping, and design standards as further outlined in the staff report and proposed ordinance. This item was introduced at the March 8th City Council meeting. This item did have a neighborhood meeting on March 24th. This item is up for a public hearing tonight. It has been properly noticed and advertised, and staff has received public comments, which have been uploaded to the agenda. John Dobashewitz of Nelson and Frankenberger and other representatives are here to present details of the project. Both they and I are available for questions should you have any for staff. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I just direct you to have that, advance that, or if you can zoom into that first slide? Good evening, members of the Planning Commission. For the record, my name is John Dobashewitz. I'm a land use professional with the law firm of Nelson and Frankenberger. We represent the petitioner, Coronado Custom Homes. Present tonight on behalf of the petitioners, Martin Short of Coronado Development Corporation, as well as Jim Schinover, an attorney with our office. Coronado has previously built custom homes throughout Westfield, including communities such as Bridgewater, Brookside, Oak Manor, and Cary Glen. In addition to Westfield, Coronado has built homes throughout Hamilton and Boone, surrounding counties in central Indiana, with values ranging from $400,000 up to $2 million throughout their 27-year history. As noted, the general matter before you this evening is a public hearing for the Sycamore Glen PUD, which Coronado is proposing. The subject real estate is outlined in yellow on the aerial image now on display. The subject real estate consists of approximately 28.5 acres and is located on the south side of 159th Street, just west of Town Road. If you can advance to the next exhibit, please. There you go. As shown here, uses surrounding the real estate include the Bent Creek community to the north, single-family lots and agricultural uses to the east and west, and the Kimblewick by Del Webb community to the south. The next exhibit, please. This is just a zoom in of that exhibit that we shown here for a little greater context. The current zoning of the real estate is AGSF1, as Caleb indicated, and the parcel is within the new suburban southwest area as designated on the Westfield Comprehensive Plan where this type and style of residential development is anticipated. You can go to the next slide, please. The applicant has filed an application to rezone the real estate to the Sycamore Glen Plan Unit Development District to permit the development of a high-end custom residential community, which will have SF3 single-family as the underlying zoning classification. The concept plan of the community illustrating the street layout, tree preservation, and entrance details is shown here. Sycamore Glen will consist of a maximum of 55 lots. Open space is provided internal to the site as well as along 159th Street with an internal park and walking paths, including pedestrian connectivity to the new path along the north side of 159th Street, which connects pedestrians out to Town Road. Vehicular access will be across the street from the new entrance into Bent Creek. Lot sizes are relatively large, with all lots being a minimum of 90 feet wide and 12,000 square feet in area, with the exception of a few lots along the south perimeter, those with an asterisk on the south. And Plan Commission members who are present, for your benefit, those lots are right here along the curve. While those lots are still larger than the 12,000 square foot minimum because they're pinched down because of the curve, we're asking for a minimum 85-foot lot width for those particular lots. But again, they'll still meet the 12,000 square foot minimum. Tree preservation and buffering per the requirements of the UDO is provided along the east and west perimeter of the site next to existing residents. And landscaping and entrance enhancements are provided along 159th Street where little landscaping exists today. The next slide, please. Character photos providing examples of the home architecture are shown here. These photos are incorporated into the ordinance, as well as definitive written architectural design requirements. If you can, stay right there. I think that's 2 pages in one. The Sycamore Glen PUD has significant architectural requirements, including but not limited to large minimum home sizes of 2,000 square foot for a ranch home and 2,800 square feet for 2-story homes, exclusive of basements. The majority of homes will have side-load garages and basements. 360-degree masonry building requirements are also a standard within the written requirements. Numerous other standards which are designed to enhance the commitment to provide custom residential homes are also included. We can state without hesitation that the design standards being proposed for Sycamore Glen establish a high, if not the highest bar of other developments that the Plan Commission has seen throughout the Westfield community over the years. Again, the proposal is for a current custom residential community with significant architectural standards. As such, the anticipated and proposed architectural standards and home standards will result in home sales prices ranging from $580,000 to $750,000. In conclusion, the request was introduced, as staff indicated, on March 8th in front of the City Council. We had a neighborhood meeting on March 24th, which was conducted virtually. The adjoining owner to our west and 2 other individuals attended the meeting via phone. Questions regarding the request centered on drainage and tree preservation along the shared property lines. We appreciate your time this evening and would remain available to address any questions the Commission may have. And at the conclusion of consideration this evening, we'll continue to work with staff in addressing any items that would come up as part of the public hearing or Plan Commission comments this evening, and then return back to you at a future date for a recommendation to the City Council. With that, I'll conclude. I'd be glad to address questions you might have.
Thank you. First thing we'll do is open a public hearing at 9:29. There's not many of us left here.
Bob, can I make a suggestion?
Sure.
While we're waiting for people to send something in, I would appreciate it if Pam could bring up the public comments and you could read the very last one from Jennifer Smith, who was the part of the group that did the comprehensive plan for this area, because I'd like you to read that. Otherwise, I'll be reading it later. And so to save time, I'd rather you read it while we have some downtime.
All right, well, public hearing is opened at 9:29, and we'll give anybody who is attending virtually this opportunity while we look this over and take that time to see if anybody else chooses to communicate with us. We do have 7 others besides this one that we need to consider as well.
forward that to us? Okay, you scroll down.
Time for a stretch. Sorry to hear you're in pain. All right. It is now 9:32. If there hasn't been any new email correspondence to enter into the public hearing, I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing at 9:32, and we have all of the correspondence that is with the agenda to consider.
Can you go to our slides, the last one? Is it appropriate for us to address the comments from the public at this time?
If there are things from the email communication, we'll do a round of comments with the commissioners as well, but if you are wanting to...
Specifically this, I think it would help facilitate the discussion with the Planning Commission.
All right, please proceed.
Zoom into that one. Right there. Not the last one, the second to last. So if you can press zoom out one time. There you go. So the real estate, as staff indicated, is in the area that's identified as New Suburban Southwest. It's right here. There's a sliver of it right along the west perimeter that's designated under that existing rural southwest. That existing rural southwest area is approximately 4.5 square miles or 3,000 acres, of which the Planning Commission and Council have seen two rezone requests over the last 15-year period of the adoption of the comprehensive plan. One was Town Road Crossing, located in this vicinity right here. A little pinch of it right here that was part of a development that included 1 home per acre as a maximum density in a conservation subdivision. The other more recently, in 2019, was the Del Webb community proposed by Pulte Homes. And this area you see right here, as well as all the way out into here, was the area that was designated as rural southwest. And the development for that parcel had 2 sections. One section was maximum 1 home per acre, and that's that area outside of the area in yellow. And then it had an area that was inside that area that's in yellow, as identified as New Suburban Southwest, and that area had about 2.2 homes per acre. The balance, as I indicated, had 1 home per acre because it's in that rural southwest designation. Other developments that you've seen over time, and you had a development plan that you just reviewed for Epcon. Epcon is positioned right here. Epcon had a density of about 2.4 homes per acre. This area in yellow here of Del Webb had about 2.2 homes per acre. Bent Creek, which is positioned to our north, has 1.3 homes per acre. Neighborhoods as you get from Ditch, so the letter from Ms. Smith indicated Ditch Road, 146th Street, State Road 32, as you work north and south and west, it should reduce in density. So we have the Lennar community here, Liberty Ridge, 2.4 homes per acre, 2.4 homes per acre, 2.2 homes per acre, 1 home per acre, just under 2 homes per acre here, and Bent Creek is 1.3, just under 1.3, about 1.29 homes per acre. As you work from north to south here, you come across Westgate. Westgate's it's about 2.9 and a half. It's close to 3 homes per acre, but it's got townhomes over here and then less density as you work south. And then there was North Wind. There was also Westchester over here. So as you can see, over the last 15 years, these different developments have occurred over time. And the density clearly has gone from more density along the perimeter, 3 homes, actually about 3 homes per acre in the non-multifamily area of Harmony, over to 1 home per acre in that area designated as rural southwest. And again, 4.5 square miles, 3,000 acres, 2 developments over 15 years. There was a letter that wasn't put up on the screen from one of the neighbors that said, perhaps presented some dissatisfaction with the efforts of the Planning Commission and Council over the last 15-year period. I would argue that the Council and Planning Commission have done more to protect this 4.5 square miles
in all of Washington Township than any other area of the community, and protecting it and following the comprehensive plan for issues like density and transition, and also in reviewing other developments in the vicinity, both to the north and to the south, and the just under 2 homes per acre proposed here, with transitioning, which was acceptable to the adjacent neighbor who met at our neighborhood meeting. They wanted to see the tree line preserved rather than torn out with a 4-foot mound across 60% and new trees on top of that. Our plan is for tree preservation area and then drainage swale. There was another letter that also wasn't put up on the screen, was from our owner to the east. They were concerned about drainage, and they actually shed water onto us, which we have to receive. So preserving the existing tree line and creating a swale beyond that it receives that water from the offsite area, transmitting that into our ponds, and then discharging that at an improved location is actually, I think, preferable than a situation where we tear out all the tree line, put in a 4-foot mound across 60% of that frontage along those backyards. So just wanted to have an opportunity to kind of set the table for the discussion and confirm with the Plan Commission that this plan meets the goals and objectives of the comprehensive plan and has decreased in density, as you can see there, as well as being respectful to the adjacent property owners. With that, I'll conclude. Be glad to address additional questions the commission may have.
Okay, thank you. For this item, we will start actually with Dr. Kelleher.
Thank you. The reason I asked you to read Ms. Smith's letter is because it stated what I would say. So rather than me going on and on about it, I suggest you read her letter. When earlier in the evening, we looked at the Del Webb project and some other projects down there. And as you recall, the buffer that I showed you was 60 feet. John had a 200-foot buffer on a southern parcel. This is the center, and it should be less dense, certainly not any higher density than Bent Creek. And I think if you'll read the letter, you'll realize that there are agricultural properties that are not going to go away. This is a way to transition, and frankly, we really haven't transitioned. To go from 2.3 to 2.5 or 1.8 is not much of a transition. And I will disagree with John is that the Plan Commission has been protecting this southwest, existing southwest rural. There's been no proposal out there really other than his conservation subdivision several years ago. So it's not been an active, we're protecting this. It's just that this high density stuff hasn't put pressure on it yet. So, people bought in this community based on our comprehensive plan. And I think they're getting pretty discouraged, especially as you go into these more rural areas, that we're really not following it. But I'll stop there and hope that you read Jen's letter.
Okay, thank you. Move on with Andre Maui.
I want to hone in on a specific thing that you said, John, and give you some feedback on that. And in probably every case I can think of, I want to leave it open to not an absolute, but I would favor a tree preservation area with natural topography or enhanced acceptance of drainage and so forth. You said it more eloquently than I'm doing right now versus clearing and putting in berms and kind of a forced buffering. So that was a kind of a minor point among the many things that you mentioned, and I just wanted to hone in and give you feedback on that.
Thank you.
That I agree with your statement on that. That's all I had.
Thank you.
Thank you. Victor McCarty.
Yeah, I'll agree with Mr. Mayo on that, hence agreeing with Mr. Dobroshewicz with the tree preservation line. And when you look at the surrounding areas, you so well detailed, the precedent has been set of just what's been approved within the past handful of years in them having higher density than what this is. And I think I've established that I'm never for high density. And when you had mentioned the southwest area here being preserved, or maybe just the lack there of projects coming forth, I would definitely agree with that statement just because of what I've experienced on the north side of 32 and what's been approved over the past several years. So I appreciate you pointing that out. And yeah, I'll just end it there. No good way to end that, but thank you.
Thank you. Cindy Spoljarek?
Well, in all honesty, I'm a bit torn. I will say there's the one thing here that's the saving grace, and that this is not another production home. And I don't mean to say that in a negative way, but let's face it, this area has been clamoring for some custom stuff, and it deserves it. And so, you know, I just want to throw that in there in the context of this discussion. It still is in the new suburban. And when I look at this, I have to look at what's around it. And obviously in the east and west, we don't have the same as what we have to the north and south. And so it adds complexity here, because moving south with that Del Webb community and then Bent Creek to the north, you know, I just don't think that it's reasonable to say that we're going to have, you know, one home per 3 acres or something there. Do I wish that this had bigger lots than what they're proposing? Yes. I wish it was more of an SF2 kind of thing instead of an SF3, or even a little bit lower than that. I guess I'll just leave it at that. Thanks.
So were you through, Cindy? I wasn't sure if you had
Yes,
something.
thank you.
Okay, wasn't sure if it trailed off or if you actually had your comment finalized. Thank you. Kristen Berkman?
Thanks, Bob. I'll start off on the positive with this, that there is custom being proposed in this, and I'd really want to see that locked down in what's happening here. But the density for me is just way too high. And as Mr. Davasewicz went through his map up there, I want to come back to Woodwin, because the density there is actually one home per 1.3 acres, which is pretty much directly to the east of this parcel. As you skip through the other AGSF1 neighbors, there's about 80% open space at the golf course because it's a conservation subdivision. So we also have Serenade that was recently approved at the corner of 161st and Ditch. We have 1 acre lots along 161st Street because that's what was in context with the neighbors along 161st Street. So while we do have density out along 32 and 146th Street, I want to make mention too of that Epcon and Liberty Ridge that were both mentioned, that they adjoin commercial. So there's some transition with density among those from a land use perspective. And as you move to the center, it's supposed to be less dense. This would be in the center section, and I call that 166 to 156, the densest things that's ever been proposed. We've got SF2 across the street at Bent Creek, and I'm going to ask staff to please let me know what the open space number is at Bent Creek, in addition to all side load garages and SF2 lots, because there is a beautiful trail that goes down the middle of Bent Creek, and it adjoins a city park. So that's an area that has a lot of open space, either within the development or adjoining that development. I will also mention, I know Mrs. Smith put it in her letter, but I just want to reiterate that the neighbors to this particular parcel have animals, and they have animals. I don't mean chickens. I mean, there's cows, and they're not moving, and they're not leaving. And so when we try to do this patchwork of sticking in a high-density development among all these AGSF1 residents, there's going to be some issues here. And so I just want to say that up front, because the animals aren't going to leave. They're going to still be there. And that's what this area was supposed to be in the comp plan. And if neighborhoods can come in and mix well in the area, then, you know, that's to be considered. So those are my comments tonight. I will say I am very happy to see custom, but this parcel for me is way too dense. And I appreciate you reaching out to those neighbors. Have you spoken to both neighbors on both sides of the parcel?
Over the course of the last couple months, we spoke to the neighbor to the west, and I believe Martin also spoke to the neighbor along the east perimeter of the site when he was out on site, and looked at the tree line along that east perimeter of the site.
Okay, okay,
And
thank
then
you.
just so we have some the benefit, when you say you're concerned about the density, and that is there a number that you're looking for that's the right number that puts you in a position to give it more favorable consideration?
I'll give that some thought, and I'll send that over to staff.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Randy Graham?
No questions, comments? Thank you.
Thank you. Mike Johns?
I guess I'm also a little convoluted here. I've sold Coronado homes before. They're a great builder, super product. They're high end. But I'm also concerned with the density too. I mean, I know we're bordering right up against it. We're smack dab right against that line. I'm going to have to give this a lot of thought because I do have some concerns with density. And I'd feel a lot more comfortable with at least half-acre lots would make me more comfortable. But I want to think about that too. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Without repeating too much, I got to say I share all these concerns about just how dense should we actually agree to here. And I've thought numerous times about way back when we did the pretty substantial comprehensive plan update that created the graphic that's been included with a lot of these, which has got these very distinct colors that come together. And we really should have blended those things much more substantially, because they were never really meant to be a hard line that when you get to this point, you become something else. We do talk about transitions and how it should generally go from something more dense to the east, more dense or less dense to the west. But tenths of units per acre is not really the thing that was envisioned back then. Instinctively, I gotta say it's too much, but I wouldn't have a better answer than Kristen or Mike that I'm just not sure what I could tell you is the right number. But I'm not happy with the number we're looking at. I do agree also, has been said, that we're looking at a housing product that's substantially different than what has been proposed in some of the areas that we have addressed and approved things over the last 5-10 years. This will no doubt probably be a very desirable neighborhood that will bring us residents that we will want to have in Westfield. I just think we need fewer of them, but I can't tell you what that number is just now. But this is the beginning of the process. We'll need to communicate more and figure out where it needs to go next, but you've heard our input for tonight. So,
Bob?
Yeah.
Bob, can I say something more? First of all, yes, there are too many homes. And number one, Coronado may build a fine home. That's not the question here. And I want all of you to remember that Bent Creek was supposed to be a custom neighborhood, and it's not. So saying that these are custom homes doesn't necessarily, there's no way we can guarantee that. So please don't put a lot of weight on that. If you look at this picture, you look at the Bent Creek to the north, and you see that there's a great deal of open space through the center and the ponds. If you look at the Del Webb community to the south, and then the one even farther south, there are significant amounts of open space, especially along that western border. So I think the important thing is here does this fit in the context of what is around it? And everybody's identifying the subdivisions, but you're forgetting that all of those people who live to the east and the west are also around it. So don't leave them out of your equation. Thank you.
Good point, thank you. I'll give John an opportunity to comment further if he has anything that he would like to suggest. You gave us a good primer at the beginning. Do you have a
As members
closure?
of the Plan Commission, give this additional consideration over time. If you have thoughts, please share those with staff that they can be transmitted to us for additional consideration. It sounds like there's members that have voiced a concern that perhaps there needs to be fewer lots, but the number of fewer lots is unknown. If that comes to greater clarity, if you could get back in touch with us, is it more a lot size similar to the lots in Bent Creek? The lots in Bent Creek are 15,000 square feet. They're 100 foot wide. That's the standard for S2. That neighborhood predates the comp plan from 2004, but nonetheless, it's there today. The last thing regarding home architecture, I would ask you to look in detail at the standards in there. If there's something you don't see in there that make you proud to say you would put your stamp of approval on that as the closest thing that we can get to guaranteeing you custom as possible, please get back and let me know that, and we'll take into consideration, because the standards there, we would stack up against anything that you've seen in the community in the past up to this point.
John, it's Jenny. I just want to let you know, I am not pushing for 3-acre lots. You know, I'm talking about a reasonable transition, and certainly something smaller than Bent Creek is not acceptable. I'm more with Mike, maybe half-acre lots. Thank you.
If I can get clarity, a half-acre lot is 22,500 square feet, of acres 43,560. Are we talking about 22,000 square foot lots, where today we're proposing 12,000 square foot lots? 22,000 square foot lots puts us at less than 1 home 1 acre. So I just want to, I don't want to leave tonight thinking that somebody says, well, come back with 21,500 square foot lot, when that's
right.
That's less than 1 home 1 acre.
Right. Here's another thought. Just since we can't talk outside of this, I want to get all my thoughts here. There could be an average home size. In other words, I'm not vetted to every lot has to be the same size. You know, every lot has to be. I'm open to an average of, say, 20,000 square feet, which then would allow you to vary some larger lots, maybe to the northern part of this property, and smaller lots to the south. So it would allow you to transition within the site. That's another way of kind of skinning the cat, so to speak.
Understood.
If I may.
Please, go ahead.
Just as a reminder, what are we looking at currently of home per lot?
Houses per acre?
Thank you, yes.
1.93 homes per acre is what's currently shown here.
Okay. So that was my question, then a comment. So at 1.93, I mean, that's less than what we've been seeing north of 186, north of 32, and, you know, just the developments that have been approved there within the past several years. So I'm currently feeling with my fellow commissioners the same type of energy and overall feel that I have regarding the north side of 32, regarding this project in the southwest corner of Westfield. So I would just ask, when we're talking about density and so forth, is just to keep that same energy when we're looking at Westfield as a whole and not just this one quadrant, because when I hear 1.93, I'm like, oh yeah, that's reasonable. We had Lancaster, what was that, Lancaster Phase 2 was at 2.8 or something like that, 2.4, higher than that. So that proves my point of we're seeing higher density out where I am, above 186, Atwater, Lancaster, et cetera, and I know precedent has been set there, but I would just like to see that same energy that we're talking about here tonight regarding this area, regarding the rest of Westfield. So that's just my comment.
Yeah, so just as a point of comment, I guess, if anything, I mean, the comp plan recommendations are different for different parts of the community, so there is a specific discussion about decreasing the density in this part of our community as development extends west. And I don't believe there's that same language in the northern part of our community. So just be careful, be aware of that when you're making those kinds of comments, because it's not apples to apples, so.
Kevin, may I add to that, that some of these that we've been looking at are already zoned as well. And this particular parcel is AGSF1 zoning currently. So that, that can make a difference too if something's already been rezoned. So I just wanted to add that. Thank you. And I think I would be remiss also to not bring up 159th Street. There were some promised, I think, road widening of that particular road when Bent Creek started their phase 2. And John, I know this isn't really you, but I just wanted on record that I think this 159th Street corridor still needs investigation. It's very narrow. The neighbors are very, very concerned still about that road.
So that is also on our thoroughfare plan, and that will be widened over time as development occurs, just like any other perimeter street, so. Yeah, I don't know. I'll leave it at that.
We can't really sit here and pick numbers. It has to evolve in some give and take. It'd be a whole lot easier if we actually weren't looking at a very large rectangle that's been in agricultural use and is just barren. If we had groves of trees and some undulation in the land and things that would drive a obvious design, we'd be having a different discussion. This is both an easy and a difficult, perhaps, site to try to develop because there aren't really that many things to deal with. You can kind of see, looking at the aerial that I keep on the screen in front of me during a lot of these meetings, where water's going, and you've got the place where it is going already figured out. So that's one constraint that's known, but it's difficult in the context of trying to figure out where does the transition begin. And in my mind, I think it's largely begun the way you described, but maybe we weren't as aggressive as we could have been and what the residents out that way would have liked us to have been. And I'm not trying to say that we've drawn a line in the sand at the east edge of this property, but it needs to be, like I said earlier, more than tenths of units per acres that we're talking about as far as differences as we go to the western part of Washington Township. So if I can feel more
One other
comfortable
point
offering
that-
something in particular, more specifics, I will absolutely get you that. Go ahead,
Yeah.
Dr. Keller.
First of all, I wasn't suggesting that you do mounding. I mean, as much natural in buffers is fine. And also, we had talked in the comp plan about connecting subdivisions with trails and paths. And I know that Del Webb and some of these southern subdivisions, it would be nice if all of these somehow connected. That was the original plan of the comp plan, not just to go out to the street and follow a path, but to try to connect these subdivisions. So I'll shut up.
Well, thanks everyone for your comments. We'll work to collect all those and again, work with staff and come back to you at your, not next meeting, but a future meeting and look for additional input, if not a recommendation.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have one more public hearing on tonight's agenda, the Davis PUD Amendment 2, item 2104-PUD-14. Caleb?
Good evening. For the record, Caleb Ernest with the Community Development Department. The item presented before you tonight is an amendment to the Davis Planned Unit Development District. This area is approximately 80 acres and is currently zoned the Davis PUD District. The area is located generally on the west side of Ditch Road between 156th Street and 161st Street. The PUD amendment proposes modifying the architectural standards for the side and rear building facade requirements. This item was introduced at the March 8th City Council meeting. This item did have a neighborhood meeting on March 29th. This item is up for a public hearing tonight, has been properly noticed and advertised. Staff has received public comments, which have been included on the agenda. Brian Stump with 11th Street Development and other representatives are here to present details of the project. They are available to answer any questions, as am I, should you have any for staff. Thank you.
Thank you. Brian?
Good evening, members of the commission. My name is Brian Stump for the 11th Street Development, here representing Estridge Homes and an amendment to the architectural standards for a very particular case in the Serenade neighborhood. The Serenade neighborhood is on the west side of Ditch Road between 156th Street and 161st Street. Hey, Kevin, do you mind if I drive on the? I say because there's some particular details I want to point out. So when in this neighborhood, Estridge expected a mix of sort of, modern farmhouse and European styles. And frankly, we've had the neighborhood, people's preferences have been for the more European style architecture, which tends to be predominantly brick. One of the key elements of this is a strong horizontal line that lines up with the porch. So you'll see that through all the homes in the neighborhood. Even on homes that really don't have much brick, even here you'll see that porch line and how that comes across and along to the side elevations and wraps around the house. Even on homes that are brick, 100% brick on the side, you'll still see that strong horizontal line that comes through the neighborhood, through the homes of all the architecture of the homes. Which leads us to, well, why are we here tonight? Because the way the specific detailing of the architectural drawings was not done when the project went through the PUD process. The PUD requires a 36-inch high wainscot on the side and rear elevations when masonry is used on the front elevation of the home. Well, now that these plans have been finalized, and these are homes that range from $600,000 over $900,000, the elevation here comes in below that. So if we look at, should we have to raise that brick wainscot to 36 inches on the side, it would be here, and you'll see it doesn't align with the porch anymore. So while we've got brick on the front, that strong horizontals all of a sudden is out of character with the architecture through the community. So Estridge is seeking to adjust the language in the PUD so essentially they can continue building the homes they're building today. Because once we hit that 51st home that has brick on the front, that wainscot has to be higher. So that's, in a nutshell, what the request is. And I'm available for any questions you may have.
Thank you. This does require a public hearing. It is now 10:04, so hopefully not take too much longer here, but I'll open a public hearing. There's probably nobody in the house that's going to have submitted a card now. Do we have any emails?
We don't have any comments.
We don't. All right, just in case there's still somebody online, we'll wait a minute or minute and a half here for somebody to type real quickly if there is a comment that needs to be made, and then we'll move on. As soon as the time moves on to 10:06, we'll move on ourselves. Oh, you had to tell me. I've got it recording at home. Thank you. It's 10:06. Public hearing is closed. I do that to myself sometimes, too. All right. Commissioner comments. We'll start with Andre Maui.
I expect we'd all agree that more is better in terms of the masonry when we don't have a fully developed architecture, and so that's why the higher wainscot originally. But certainly, once the details are all done, and that intent is never to compromise a good-looking product. So certainly favor giving it a consistent look, even though that means reducing masonry in some cases. Looks good to me.
Thank you. Victor?
I concur. Thank you.
Very good. Cindy Spoljarek?
Also concur, thank you.
Thank you. Kristen Berkman?
I think this is fine. I know you guys originally said 50, and it sounds like you're getting really close to that. But I know I've said this earlier, but I just want to say it again, Brian, while you're here. The homes are beautiful. You all said you'd do something, and it's fun. We ride our bikes over there quite a bit, and it's fun to see what's going up next because they all look beautiful. It's really a nice neighborhood. So thank you. No problems with this amendment.
Thank you. Randy Graham?
I'm not a fan of the reduction in the masonry personally, and, we tend to remember having very much discussion about it initially to implement that, but, seems like everybody else seems to like the product better than me, so I'll leave it at that. Thanks.
Okay. Mike Johns?
I'm okay with the change.
Thank you. Dr. Kelleher?
I understand the reason for the change. In the original PUD, it was a 36-inch wainscot, but up to 50 of the 125 homes could have 18 inches. So apparently what's happened is they are now up to that 50 and people still want these homes. I'm like Randy, I'm not really a fan of decreasing it, but I understand the reason here. And if there could be some examples put in the PUD of what type of homes these would be put on, that might be more helpful, because I don't want it just to be a blanket, you only have to do 18 inches, which is basically, to me, in many cases, a foundation. But if there are styles that lend to that, and the petitioner could put some of those as examples, not necessarily exactly that house, but examples of the type of style that would warrant that, that would make me a lot more comfortable with this. Thank you.
Thank you. I've oftentimes kind of been the odd voice out in terms of masonry. If you're going to have it, it needs to be substantial and worthwhile. I live in a house that strictly has foundation brick and a chimney. And it's got a spanking new whole exterior of James Hardy plank on it now that looks nice and red compared to the green that it used to be. So I'm thinking I've got a really satisfactory look for people like me, that when we talk about things like this, I feel like, well, crap, you don't want people like me in your neighborhood, which is kind of insulting in a way. But I understand why, by and large, a lot of this needs to occur, because left to their own devices, may not work out correctly. So we do tend to value masonry high, and I understand why. And I just feel sometimes, though, what we end up with looks like a compromise as opposed to an intelligent decision. This didn't make a lot of sense to me at first, but after listening to your explanation and seeing the details, I think I'd have to agree that this probably will be appropriate for this neighborhood because of the nature of what the customers want. Didn't quite get the array of customers with different home tastes that sounds like it was anticipated initially, hence the numbers that were triggering doing different things. So if this is who the buyers are, I don't think I want to be part of asking them to do something that looks like a compromise as opposed to something that actually makes sense. So if we can't have enough of it to make it worthwhile, let's make it at a different amount that actually does make sense. So I kind of come along with that. So
Bob, may I ask one other question?
yeah, please jump in. That's all I had to say.
With what Dr. Kelleher was saying, are you adding new images to the PUD? Because you have quite a few images in the PUD. Are there new designs, or is it staying pretty much the same as what you had?
Yeah, Estridge is simply seeking to continue building what they're already building in the neighborhood.
Okay. So when she was asking you, can you do images? Are they already in the PUD?
No, we were just doing it as a text amendment. So because we, as was mentioned, we're getting close to, Estridge will soon be getting close to that 51st building permit that will require the higher wainscot, which doesn't match the architectural style of the community, so.
But you have, like, I looked at the PUD earlier today, I don't know, probably 20 images on the PUD. And I think, and I looked at them and I'm like, that's what you are actually building. So are you asking for any new designs in addition to what's in the PUD?
Estridge is asking to continue building what they're currently
What
building.
they're currently
Yeah.
doing? Okay, okay, thank you.
And legalize it because the number that could be built this way has been achieved. So we
Correct,
need to
yeah. Another way of looking at
modify
it
the-
is getting rid of the cap that says
Yeah.
you only have 50 that do this, because what's happened is we've had a lot more brick in the neighborhood than was expected, because of the European architectures being selected where it's nearly 100% brick on the front facade, or most of the homes are 100% brick on the facade. The front facade, that's what's triggering more of the homes, so.
Okay. I think we're good.
One question I do have is, given that we haven't had any negative comments about this petition, the letter that you have received is a letter of support, would it be possible to get a recommendation tonight? Or
I'll defer to staff on that. When the documentation is appropriate to go ahead and give an approval on the night of a public hearing, it's usually flagged up front, and if it's not, it's because there's maybe some undotted i's or uncrossed t's. Are we good here or no?
Yes, staff thinks they're ready for recommendation if it's
Oh.
your will.
All right, that being the case, if there is somebody who would like to offer a motion to,
I appreciate the boldness. I'll make the motion to approve 2104-PUD-14 Davis PUD Amendment 2.
I'll second.
okay, we have a motion from Victor, a second from Dr. Kelleher. Will staff please call the roll?
Mr. Horkay?
Yes.
Mr. Johns?
Yes.
Dr. Kelleher?
Yes.
Mr. Maui?
Yes.
Mr. McCarty?
Yes.
Ms. Bulgarek?
Yes.
Ms. Berkman?
Yes,
Mr. Graham?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, thank you very much.
One item that does not have to come back now.
You're a little bit later next meeting.
It was worth the wait, wasn't it?
Sorry for putting you.
All right, we have 6 continued items that we won't talk about anymore tonight, and we are then down to reports and comments. Plan commissioners have any comments for the good of the order here?
I can do a brief update on the council if you'd like.
Yeah, if we don't have commissioner comments, it's time to move on then to reports from liaisons. Let's hear from council.
Very quickly, it was short. We approved a term sheet for the project in Union Square that concerns the parking garage. We did approve the Woods Robinson Briggs project that came through APC, and then we had several food truck requests for various events. So that,
Thank you.
And I've got BZA,
But
and
you
that's
didn't have
also
a-
short.
So you didn't have a meeting in
We
between
didn't have
last
a
meeting and
meeting,
now.
and April's meeting was canceled, so there you go.
Thank you for that wonderful report. Community Development Department.
Yeah, I'll be quick. Just a quick reminder, if you have any additional comments or want to provide written comments to any of these public hearing items this evening, please get those to us by the end of the day, Wednesday this week, so we can include those in our issue lists for those items, so those can go out by the end of the week to the petitioner. That's it.
Very good.
Thanks.
The printed agenda actually said Plan Commission members first. I see online it did actually identify Community Development first. That's why I didn't call on you first. I was looking at the
Look at
paper.
that.
My bad.
No worries.
All right. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Let's do this by voice, because I'm sure we're unison, right? Everybody in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any-
Aye.
All right, we are adjourned.